This episode from the life of Sherlock Holmes will be transmitted to our men and women overseas by shortwave and through the worldwide facilities of the Armed Forces Radio Service. Petri Wine brings you Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce in the new adventures of Sherlock Holmes. The Petri family, the family that took time to bring you good wine, invite you to listen to Dr. Watson tell us another exciting adventure he shared with his old friend, that master detective, Sherlock Holmes. So let's settle back comfortably and listen, and while you're getting settled, I'd like to know if you like seafood. And by seafood, I mean everything from broiled lobster to fried halibut. Because if you like seafood, any seafood, you'll love it together with Petri California Sauterne. Fish and Petri Sauterne were made for each other. No kidding. Boy, I'll never in my life forget a broiled brook trout on the plate in front of me and a glass of well-chilled Petri Sauterne right next to it. That fish and that Sauterne. Petri Sauterne has a pale golden color that's really good to look at. And as for taste, well, that Petri flavor is really something. Take my word for it and try it, won't you? Oh, and I'll tell you something else. Try that Petri Sauterne with chicken sometime. Look, I better stop before I get hungry all over again, but just remember this. The best friend a good meal ever had is a glass of Petri wine. And now let's keep our appointment with the good Dr. Watson.
Come in.
Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening, Mr. Bartell. Come over here and join me by the fire.
I didn't think it was cold enough for a fire tonight, Doctor.
Oh, I suppose it isn't really, but there was one laid, so I just couldn't resist putting a match to it.
Fire's a good accompaniment to storytelling anyway.
Yes, my boy, a fire and a glass of port. Care to join me in one?
Thanks, Doctor. So, you're going to tell us a sea story tonight?
Yes, Mr. Bartell. The whole adventure took place aboard a small steamer as it plowed through the stormy seas of the Indian Ocean. Here's your glass, my boy.
Thanks. And what were you and the great Sherlock Holmes doing on the Indian Ocean, may I ask?
We're on our way to Calcutta to solve the case of the vanishing elephant of Pur.
Oh, yes, the story you told us a few weeks ago.
That's quite right, my boy. It's in the summer of 1894 that we left Liverpool aboard the steamship Lucifer. It wasn't a large ship, and as both the Mediterranean and the Red Sea proved somewhat, shall we say, unfriendly, I may tell you the first part of the voyage was quite unpleasant. In fact, until we left Aden, I'd spent most of the time in my cabin. I'm not much of a sailor, you know. However, as we headed eastward towards Colombo, the weather cleared up a bit, and I came on deck and joined Holmes. I remember on the second night out of Aden, we paced the decks together. The stars above us twinkled, the promise of a bright tomorrow, and the faint tinkle of a piano being played in the passenger lounge formed a perfect setting for an evening stroll. It only seems like yesterday that Holmes said...
Watson, it's good to see you on your feet again.
Yes, it's good to be on 'em, Holmes. It's been a miserable trip for me so far.
The captain told me tonight that we can expect good weather between here and Caravati, our next port of call.
I thought Colombo was the next stop. And where is Caravati, whatever you call it? Anyway, I never heard of the place.
It's a tiny island in the Indian Ocean. It's a British protectorate. Those were the only facts I was able to glean from the encyclopedia and the ship's library.
Did you ask the captain why we're stopping there?
No, I didn't. As we're traveling incognito, I felt it wiser not to ask too many questions.
I find this incognito business something of a strain. Every time a steward calls me Mr. Hamish, I can't think who on earth he's talking to.
Whereas I find myself answering to Mr. Mycroft almost automatically. By the way, old chap, now that you're going to mix with the ship's passengers, I suggest that you adopt a Scotch accent. It would seem more appropriate for a Mr. Hamish, and I don't want anyone aboard to suspect our true identities.
Oh, I'll do my best, but I must say, Holmes, I think you're being unnecessarily mysterious.
Possibly I've been influenced by reading too many of your rather florid stories of our adventures together.
My stories are not florid. They're all perfectly true.
Oh, don't be angry with me, old chap. Don't be angry, please. By the way, you'll be interested to know that I've unearthed a little mystery aboard this boat.
I trust you to do that. Where is she? I mean, what is it?
Oh, You observe that suite of cabins on the bridge deck above us?
Yeah? What about them?
Well, I've been watching them during my nightly strolls for the past 2 weeks. The suite is occupied, and yet the blinds are never raised. And I've never seen meals taken in there. I presume, therefore, that it must contain a private galley and a cook.
I don't see anything mysterious about that. It's probably occupied by some wealthy invalid.
Oh, possibly. Another interesting fact is that the occupants are not entered on the ship's passenger list.
It all sounds very mysterious. There's probably a perfectly simple explanation for it. In any case, you must save your energies for the problem that awaits us in India. You're Mr. Mycroft now, remember that.
I will, Mr. Hamish.
Mr. Mycroft?
Yes, Mr. Hamish?
Would you care to join me for a wee drop of brandy in the smoking room?
Mr. Hamish, I shall be delighted.
This is excellent brandy. Excellent.
Watson, you notice that rather garrulous gentleman over there in the corner?
You mean the one at the table with the oriental-looking fella?
Yes, the talkative man is the ship's doctor, but I haven't seen the other gentleman before on this voyage.
I wonder if he's an occupant of the mysterious suite on the bridge deck.
Let's go over and talk to him, shall we? And remember the accent, Mr. Hamish.
And so, Verda, when we landed at Colombo, I decided to take Mrs. Abbott for a moonlight rickshaw drive through the cinnamon gardens. Did you gentlemen want to see me?
If you'll excuse us, Dr. Harris, my friend Mr. Hamish and I were having a little argument, and we thought that perhaps you might be able to settle it for us.
An argument? Oh, I love a good argument. Sit down, gentlemen. This is Mr. Verda.
How do you do, gentlemen?
Good evening, sir. My name is Hamish, and this is my friend, Mr. Mycroft.
I'm so happy to meet you, gentlemen.
Now, how do you know, Mr. Verda?
Now, gentlemen, tell me what you're arguing about.
Well,
I
Doctor,
love a good argument.
You see, it wasn't exactly an argument. My friend Mr. Hamish insists that the Suez Canal was built by a Dutchman in 1870. I'm convinced that it was built by de Lesseps, a Frenchman, in 1869. We thought you'd know.
You flatter me. I'm only a ship's doctor, not an historian. Ask Verdi. He probably knows.
Can you settle the question for us, sir?
I can, Mr. Mycroft. You are almost correct. The canal was opened in 1869, though its construction began 10 years previously. De Lesseps, a French engineer, was in charge of the operation. There is a statue of him in Port Said Harbor, built to commemorate his skill and enterprise.
Much obliged to you, Mr. Vera. Hamish, I think that I win my bet.
Mycroft, I'm afraid you do, if you're sure of your facts, Mr. Vera.
I'm sufficiently sure of them, Mr. Hamish, to venture a small wager myself.
No. I think I'll not make any more bets on the subject, thank you.
Well, gentlemen, if you will excuse me, I shall return to my cabin now.
Oh, don't go.
No, don't go, sir. You'll make us feel as if we'd driven you away.
Oh, not at all, Mr. Hamish. I enjoyed meeting you both, but I have some letters to write. Good evening, gentlemen.
He's a charming person.
Charming and extremely knowledgeable.
Bit of a bore, if you ask me. You two fellas enjoyed your trip?
I'm just beginning to. It takes a little time to get my sea legs, you know.
Dr. Harris, how long have you been on this ship?
4 years. This is my 23rd trip east on the Lucifer.
Uh-huh.
Why?
Well, there's something that puzzles me on board this ship. I'm assured that you would explain it to me.
And what is it?
Well, the suite of cabins on the bridge deck, who occupies them?
Wouldn't you like to know?
Aye, Doctor, we would, and that's why my friend asked you.
Well, I'll tell you. Though it's supposed to be a secret. But there'll be no harm in telling you now, for we're dropping anchor off the island of Cavarati in the morning. In that suite of rooms is the Rani of Cavarati herself. She has her own staff of servants and everything. What do you think of that?
Oh, how very interesting. And is the Oriental gentleman who left the table when we arrived part of our entourage?
He is, sir. He's the sort of Prime Minister of Cavarati. This whole trip of theirs is very hush-hush. Rani returning to her country, afraid someone might make an attack on her life. Have to keep it all hush-hush. Cavarati is an island that's had a lot of trouble.
You seem to be remarkably well informed about the place, sir.
Yeah, I should be. I used to practice there in my younger days.
Well, really, how very interesting.
Yes, I could tell you strange tales about the island. I remember Oh, hello. See that fella coming into the lounge?
You mean the big man with the grey hair?
Yes. That's Sir Christopher Wyatt, Owns all the tea plantations on Cavarati. He's a dull fella, but I'll call him over. Wyatt, come over and join us. Be careful. He'll talk your head off if you give him half a chance. Draw up a chair, Wyatt. We were just talking about Cavarati.
It seems to me that would be a good subject to keep away from. At least till after tomorrow, Harris.
What do you mean?
You know perfectly well what I mean. I should have thought that after your own experience on Cavarati, you'd have learned a little discretion.
You're talking like a schoolmaster, Wyatt. Why don't you just sit down, have a drink, and be friendly?
Thank you. I prefer my own company.
Pompous ass.
You and Sir Christopher don't seem on the best of terms, Doctor.
I know too much about him. He's afraid of me. That's what he is.
Look at this girl coming into the room. Great Scott, she's good looking.
Judging by our oriental costume, she must be a member of the Rani's retinue.
She's coming to our table. Yes, my dear. What is it?
Which of you gentlemen is Mr. Mycroft, please?
I am.
My mistress sends her compliments and asks that you will call on her in her suite.
And who is your mistress, may I ask?
Her Highness, the Rani of Cavarati.
Oh, I shall be delighted. Please tell the Rani that I shall pay my respects without delay. We will join her in a few minutes.
Very well, Mr. Mycroft.
You know, Holmes, this is pretty exciting. The girl that just brought us the message was a stunning creature. Imagine what the Rani herself must be like.
Oh, what an incurable romanticist you are, Watson. I suppose you picture the Rani clad in oriental splendor, reclining like an odalisque on silken cushions.
No, there's no need to make fun of me, old fellow.
Oh, here we are at the cabin.
Ah, it is you, gentlemen. Follow me, please. Her Highness, the Rani of Cavarati.
All right, Regina, you can off it.
Yes, Your Highness.
Well, me lads, don't look so startled. Come in and sit down.
Your Highness,
What's the matter? What's the matter? Don't I fit into your picture of a Rani? What did you expect? A slant-eyed beauty with a veil and big hips? Well, I've got the big hips, all right.
Your Highness...
never mind, Your Highness. Sit yourselves down and talk free and easy like. I may as well begin by telling you that I know who you both are. Mr. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson.
Do me.
I've seen you in the good old days in London, you know.
May I ask if our visit is purely a social one, or are you in need of professional advice?
Oh, a little of both, Mr. Holmes, a little of both. And we'll start off with being social. Bruma.
Mem Sahib.
Champagne.
Botachi, Mem Sahib.
If you'll pardon my asking you, madam, but I've never seen you before, someone.
Oh, that's a question I'm always having to answer. Yes, you probably have, Dr. Watson. You see, I was in the chorus at Daly's Theatre in London for quite a few years, until the Raja of Cavarati decided I'd look better on his island than I did in front of the footlights.
Your husband, the Raja, is dead, isn't he?
Yes, he was killed playing polo.
Champagne, Mem Sahib.
Colo. Champagne for the sector.
Acha.
He doesn't speak English, so I'll get along with telling you my troubles. Mr. Holmes, somebody's trying to kill me.
Kill you? Good God.
May I ask what reason you have for saying that, madam?
You may, Mr. Holmes. Before I left England, I had threatening letters warning me that if I ever went back to Cavarati, I'd never get to the island alive. I got another letter in Port Said that said the same thing.
You kept these letters, I trust?
No, I didn't. I tore them up. I never did pay attention to letters that weren't signed.
Oh, that's a great pity, madam. Those letters might have been invaluable.
Well, it's too late to think about that now, Dr. Watson. Here's what's on my mind. I land at Cavarati in the morning, and if anyone's up to a bit of no good, tonight's their last chance.
You destroyed the threatening letters, madam, thereby indicating that you did not believe in the threats, and yet you now appear to feel that you are in danger. I wonder what made you change your mind.
The Ace of Spades.
Yes? I don't understand you, madam.
In the last 2 days, every time I tell my fortune, I get the Ace of Spades. Now, you know what that means. Death.
Oh, come now, madam. If you'll pardon my saying so, that's a very childish superstition.
Well, the cards have never lied to me yet. Oh, you can laugh at it if you like, but I know.
Well, do you mind if I ask you a few questions?
Anything you like, Mr. Holmes, fire away.
How long is it since you were in Cavarati?
About 18 months. We were in England when my husband died, and I couldn't face the idea of going back to that island alone. 3 months ago, Verder... Oh, he's the chief minister of Cavarati.
Yes, madam. We met him for a moment in the lounge.
Oh, well, Verder came over to England to persuade me it was my duty as the Ronnie to go back.
I see. As far as you know, have you any enemies among the passengers on board the ship?
Oh, that's an odd one to answer, Mr. Holmes. But I can tell you right here in my suite there's someone who doesn't like me. That girl Raduna, the one that brought you my message. She was in love with the Roger herself. I know she hates me, even though she did stay with me in England after my husband died.
How about Ferder, your minister?
Oh, he's all right. My husband thought the world of him, and he's been wonderful to me.
He came from Cavarati recently, you say, to persuade you to return there.
That's right, Mr. Holmes. Well, Bruma seems to be all right after drinking that champagne, so it'll be safe for us to have some now. Champagne homme quedon?
Botace même side.
Oh, I've been burning with curiosity to know why you gave him a glass of champagne a few minutes ago, and yet we didn't have any.
Well, surely that's obvious, Watson. Fulmer is the official poison taster, isn't he, madam?
That's right, Mr. Holmes. He tastes everything I eat or drink before I do. Well, if it doesn't affect him, then I know it's safe. Verder brought him over to England when he came to fetch me. On the island of Cavarati, poisoning's quite an hobby, you know.
There were 2 people in the smoking room tonight who seemed to know quite a lot about your island. The ship's doctor, a rather garrulous gentleman by the name of Harris, and Sir Christopher Wyatt, who owns tea plantations on the island. Do you know either of them, madam?
I should say I do, both of them. Dr. Harris isn't any good. He was on the island for a bit, but he got into some kind of trouble, and my husband had him thrown out.
And how about Sir Christopher Wyatt?
Oh, Chris is all right. I saw quite a bit of him in London after my husband's death. As a matter of fact, well, if I weren't going back to Cavarati, I don't think he'd be on the boat at all. He hasn't been there for over 5 years, ever since he had a row with my husband over the wages he paid the native labor.
It seemed to me that several people aboard this boat have a personal interest in the island of Cavarati. Interests that might be influenced by your death.
Yes, just what I was going to say, madam. I think we should keep an eye on you.
Oh, that's just what I was hoping you'd say, Doctor. You see, I'm giving a bit of a supper party tonight. All the people we've been talking about have been invited. And I thought if you two were to be here, perhaps you'd be on the lookout for any funny business. How about it?
Well, of course we'll come, won't we, Holmes?
I think it might be a good idea. Though I would suggest that we retain our incognitos as Mr. Hamish and Mr. Mycroft.
Well, whatever you say, Mr. Holmes. And now, let's have that champagne.
You know, Holmes, I remember the Raleigh when she was in the chorus at Daly's. She looked stunning in tights. There was one night I
Yes,
took
no
her out
time,
to
old
dinner
chap,
and
if you don't mind. At the moment, there's a question I want to ask you.
Oh, sir?
Is your medical bag fully equipped with all the antidotes to poison?
Poison? It's ridiculous. How could the Rani be poisoned when she has a poison taster?
My dear Watson, you mustn't...
What the blazes is that?
Come on, Watson. That cry came from the companionway.
There are 2 figures struggling by the rail there.
Good heavens! One of them has pushed the other down the companionway.
Good Lord. His skull smashed in. I'm afraid that he...
What's happened?
Sir Christopher Wyatt. What are you doing here?
I was taking a stroll. I heard a yell from this direction and came here as fast as I could. Great Scott, this fellow's bleeding badly. We must get the ship's doctor at once.
That's hardly necessary, I fear, Sir Christopher.
What do you mean?
In the first place, this man is dead. In the second place, he is the ship's doctor.
We'll hear the rest of Dr. Watson's story in just a second, so I'm just going to ask you to do one thing for me. Well, I should say for yourself. Tomorrow night, if you're having meat or any meat dish for dinner, why not open up a bottle of Petri California Burgundy? That wonderful, rich, red Petri Burgundy will turn your dinner into a real feast. You see if it doesn't. Because there's nothing like a good wine with good food. And I know your family gets good food, and I know that Petri Burgundy is a good wine. In fact, it's a perfect mealtime wine. Try it and see. And Now, Dr. Watson, tell us what happened next. You said you found the ship's doctor dead at the foot of the companionway?
Yes, Mr. Bartell. His neck had been broken instantly.
Imagine there was a good deal of excitement aboard.
No, my boy, as a matter of fact, there wasn't. We managed to get the body back to its cabin without attracting attention. Holmes, after revealing his true identity, was able to persuade the captain to hush up the killing until after the Rani's party had taken place.
Oh, he didn't want to scare the murderer, I guess. What happened next, Doctor?
Holmes and I returned to our cabin to dress for the party. Holmes, I remember, was in a state of suppressed excitement. He spoke quietly and deliberately.
Watson, surely it's obvious why the doctor was murdered?
Oh, it isn't obvious to me.
But it's elementary, my dear fellow. If you are planning a subtle murder by poison, how wise to remove the one man who might save the victim's life, a doctor.
Oh, you keep harping on poisoning. It seems to me to be the last way a murderer would try to dispose of the Rani. Everything she touches is first tested by the poison tester.
Exactly. That's why I call it a subtle murder attempt. Didn't you notice the physical attributes of Prumer, the poison tester?
Which in particular,
Well,
Holmes?
his unusually glossy hair, his remarkably clear complexion, his plump figure. Look here. Just tell me one thing, will you?
What's that?
I presume that in your medical bag you have a supply of magnesia.
Naturally?
Do you also have hydrated ferric oxide?
Yes, I do.
Splendid. Let's be off to the party.
Oh, funny things to take to a party, I must say.
That's true, my dear fellow, but I'm afraid that this party may not prove as convivial as the Rani thinks.
Holmes, it's nearly 1 in the morning. Everything seems to be going splendidly.
It seems to be, Watson, but keep your eyes on the Rani.
Yes, I have been. The poison testers tested everything that passed her lips. We don't endorse to you, Sir Christopher. You having a good time?
Yes, indeed, thank you, Mr. Hamish. How about you, Mr. Mycroft?
Oh, the Rani's a perfect hostess. Who could help having a good time?
I don't think that girl Regina should be here, though. I don't want to be pompous, but after all, she's only a glorified servant.
Oh, possibly the laws of etiquette are not so strict in Cavarati as they are in London, Sir Christopher.
Oh, perhaps you're right. But I don't trust the girl. There's something shifty about her. I've told the Rani more than once. Oh, well, I suppose it's none of my business. I think I'll try and persuade the Rani to sing us one of her old songs.
He doesn't trust Raduna, and I don't trust him. I don't think it was an accident that we found him near the body of Dr. Harris.
Shh. Here comes Vera.
I trust you gentlemen are enjoying yourself.
Very much, Mr. Vera, thank you. I imagine you must be excited at the prospect of returning to Caravati.
I am, Mr. Mycroft. Though I only left it 3 months ago, it has seemed more like 3 years.
Do you ken what time we'll arrive there?
I am told that we shall be there in 5 hours, Mr. Hamish.
Oh, look. The Rani's at the piano. She must be going to give us a tune.
Yes. Let's move a little closer, shall we?
Chris here has asked me to sing something. Well, my voice isn't what it used to be, and don't I know it. But me spirit's the same, and that's enough to put a number over. So, hold tight, boys. Here we go. My sweetheart's the man in the moon. I'm going to marry him soon. 'Twould fill me with bliss just to give him one kiss, but I know that a dozen I never would miss. I'll go up in a great big...
Great Scott, she...
Quick, Watson, your medical bag. I'll lock the doors.
Right, your Holmes.
Bring some water, please.
Help me. Oh, please, help me.
What is the matter?
Don't be frightened, madam. I'll take care of you.
Thirsty. Give me water.
She wants water, please.
Oh, such pain.
All the symptoms of arsenic poisoning. Now I know why Holmes asked me if I had any magnesia and ferric oxide.
Do something for me, Doctor. I'm dying.
Don't worry, Your Highness. You're not going to die. She's going to live, Holmes. Ah, gracious me, I'm tired. It's touch and go there for a while, though.
Well done, Watson, old chap. Well done.
Now that she's out of danger, why can't we all go back to our cabins? It's nearly dawn, and we've been locked in here since 1 o'clock. We've no right to do this, you know.
Possibly not, Sir Christopher, but there's a murderer in this cabin, and I don't intend to let him escape.
Mr. Holmes, what happened? How
could I have been poisoned when Frumer tasted everything first? Why wasn't he poisoned?
For a very simple reason, Your Highness. The murderer has been conditioning Frumer for over a year.
What do you mean?
He's been feeding him gradually increasing doses of arsenic until he has finally become immune to the poison.
Great Scott, I never thought of that.
Frumer's glossy hair, his complexion, and stout figure are all typical of a person who consumes arsenic regularly.
But who could have done it?
Only one person had the opportunity.
Well, tell us who that person is.
No, not you, Sir Christopher, not you. For you haven't been on the island for years, whereas Frumer returned from Caravati but 3 months ago. Raduna has also been in London with her mistress for the past 18 months, remember? The answer is obvious.
You did it, Verda. You brought the taster over when you came to fetch me. You'd prepared him for the year beforehand.
Of course I did. No white runner will ever rule over Cavarati.
And you murdered Dr. Harris.
Equally true. Mr. Holmes, give me the key to the door, please. Oh, no.
What?
Do not come near me. Please throw it on the floor. Do not hesitate. You see this revolver? I should have no compunction in using it, I assure you.
How do you expect to escape, Vera?
The key, please. Thank you.
You'll never get away with this, Verda, you devil.
But I shall. We are now in the harbor of Cavarati. I shall swim ashore and arrange your welcome, my dear Rane. Turn your backs, please. Turn them. Thank you. Goodbye.
He's gone.
Come on, Watson. After him. You have your revolver, Watson?
Yes, but I didn't get a chance to draw it. He had me covered.
Well, draw it now, old fellow. Aim for a leg or an arm and don't hesitate to shoot.
There he is, up on the lifeboat. He's clambering up on the rail.
Where is he? Where did he go?
Out there on the rail above us, madam. He's going to dive.
Give me that revolver, Dr. Watson, quick. That's it. Come down off there, Verda.
Fools! Meddlers! Keep out of my affairs!
There he goes. He's dived.
Madam, you shot to kill.
Of course I did, Mr. Holmes. Remember that we're now in Cavarati waters, and that though I may not look like it at the moment, I am still the Ronnie of Cavarati.
Say, that was a swell story, Doctor. It had a lot of color and quite a bit of action.
Color and a bit of action. Well, I'm glad you liked it, my boy.
Oh, I did. Say, that's not a bad idea. I mean, having someone taste everything before you eat it.
Oh, it's a very old idea, very old. Very common, too, years ago.
You know the kind of job I'd like?
No, what's that?
I'd like to be the official taster for the Petrie family. Boy, just think of all the Petrie wine I'd get to taste. Petrie to the right of me, Petrie to the left of me. What a life. What wine?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind having that job myself.
You said it. The Petrie family, really knows how to make good wine. They've been making wine for generations. And because they've always owned and operated their own business ever since it was started way back in the 1800s, well, the Petrie family has sure piled up plenty of skill and experience. Yes, they've been handing down in the family from father to son, the fine art of turning luscious grapes into delicious wine. That's why you can't go wrong with any Petrie wine. It must be good, because Petrie took time to bring you good wine. Well, Doctor, what new story do you have lined up for us next week?
Next week, Mr. Bartell, I'm going to tell you an adventure that Sherlock Holmes and I had many years ago. It concerns a series of bonfires, an underground cellar full of gunpowder, and a strange death on the rooftops of London.
Tonight's Sherlock Holmes adventure is written by Dennis Green and Anthony Boucher and was suggested by an incident in the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle story, The Adventure of the Mazarin Stone. Mr. Rathbone appears through the courtesy of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, and Mr. Bruce through the courtesy of Universal Pictures, where they are now starring in the Sherlock Holmes series. The Petri Wine Company of San Francisco, California, invites you to tune in again next week, same time, same station. This is Harry Bartell saying goodnight for the Petri family. Sherlock Holmes comes to you from our Hollywood studio. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System. This episode from the life of Sherlock Holmes will be transmitted to our men and women overseas by shortwave and through the worldwide facilities of the Armed Forces Radio Service. Petri Wine brings you Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce in the new adventures of Sherlock Holmes. The Petri family, the family that took time to bring you good wine, invites you to listen to Dr. Watson tell us another exciting adventure he shared with his good friend, that master detective, Sherlock Holmes. And if you ask me, the best way to listen to that story is to do it with a glass of port wine right handy. Petri California port. No kidding, that Petri port is just swell for any time good friends get together to talk things over. You couldn't ask for a more delicious wine. Why, just looking at the deep, rich red color of that Petri port tells you that here's a wine with a flavor that comes right from the heart of sun-ripened grapes. If you haven't ever tried Petri Port, why not get a bottle and have a glass after dinner tomorrow night? It's a perfect after-dinner wine, you know. And share that port with your family and your friends. And don't forget, when you serve Petri Port, you can serve it proudly. Because after all, the name Petri is the proudest name in the history of American wines. And now let's keep our weekly appointment. Good evening, Dr. Watson.
Good evening, Mr. Bartell. Draw up a chair.
Thank you.
That's it. By the way, do you know what date it is?
November 5th, isn't it?
That's right. In England, it's known as Guy Fawkes Day. Have you ever heard of it?
It's something to do with a gunpowder plot, isn't it?
Yes, Mr. Bartell, it is. And as Sherlock Holmes and I had a very unusual adventure on the 5th of November many years ago, it seems appropriate that I should tell you about it tonight. But before I begin, I think it might help you to appreciate the true flavor of the story if I tell you a little about the origin and the customs of Guy Fawkes Day.
It's a swell idea, Dr. Watson.
Well, my boy, on November the 5th, 1605, exactly 340 years ago today, King James I was about to attend the opening of Parliament when a plot was discovered to blow up the House of Lords during the ceremony.
And the chief conspirator was Guy Fawkes, I suppose?
Yes, he was. He was captured in a vault immediately below the House of Lords, a vault full of barrels of gunpowder. Of course, he and his fellow conspirators were executed. And ever since then, November the 5th has been known as Guy Fawkes Day.
Well, how's it celebrated, Doctor?
Well, it's a great time for the youngsters, Mr. Bartell. They black their faces, throng the streets, begging for pennies, and build bonfires in which to burn effigies of Guy Fawkes. These effigies are life-size dummies, stuffed with straw and dressed in old clothes. The children parade them in the streets chanting rhymes. Well, now, let me see. Pleased to remember the 5th of November. Guy Fawkes Guy, hit him in the eye.
The kids must have quite a time. Sort of like Halloween, huh, Doc?
Yes, not unlike it, my boy. Well, now that I've told you something about the customs of Guy Fawkes Day, I'll get on with my story. It began just before lunch, I remember, on November the 5th, 1899. The day was foggy and cold, and Holmes and I were seated each side of a blazing fire in our Baker Street rooms. From outside, we could hear the sound of voices laughing and singing. Suddenly, Holmes rose and crossed to the window, opened it, and looked out. Then he turned to me and spoke.
children are having a great time, Watson, aren't they?
Yes, it cost me a shilling worth of pennies to walk here this morning.
Has it occurred to you, Watson, that the gunpowder plot offers very promising material to the speculative mind?
In what way, Holmes? I say it's confoundedly chilly in here. Don't you think you might shut that window?
Sorry, old chap. As I was saying, the gunpowder plot offers very promising material to the speculative mind. I've made something of a study of the historical records of the case. There is more than a little evidence to suggest that King James was never in any real danger.
Never in any danger? Well, what makes you say that?
Knowledge of the proposed dastardly scheme came to light early. But James Stuart, King of England, the possessor of a shrewd and diabolical mind, used the spectacular discovery of the plot to try and bolster his waning popularity, as well as to justify increased religious persecutions.
Well, that's the first I've heard of it, Holmes.
I dare say, old fellow, but it's true just the same. I'm afraid James Stuart, King of England, was an unscrupulous tyrant. Come in. Oh, yes, Mrs. Hudson?
There is a gentleman to see you, Mr. Holmes. He said it was very important, and he asked me to give you his card.
Oh, thank you, Mrs. Hudson. Oh, ask him to come up, please, will you?
Aye, sir.
Who is it, Holmes?
A gentleman with a remarkably fine sense of timing. Read his card for yourself.
Let's have a look. Mr. James Stuart. Great Scott, that's an extraordinary coincidence that he should arrive just as we're talking about James Stuart, King of England.
Come in.
Mr. James Stuart.
How do you do, Mr. Stuart? My name is Sherlock Holmes, and this is my colleague, Dr. Watson.
How do you do, sir? How do you do?
Mr. Holmes, you've got to help me. I'm walking about in mortal fear of my life. You've got to help me.
Mr. Stuart, I suggest that you sit down. I'll do anything in my power to help you, but you must compose yourself first and tell me quietly what it is that's frightening you.
How can I compose myself when I may be dead within a few hours?
No, Mr. Stuart. I'm a doctor. I really think if I were to give you a sedative that you'd find...
How can you talk of sedatives when I... My heart. Doctor. My heart.
All right. Now, here, let me help you into this sofa. There you are now.
Imagine that brandy would be in all of Watson.
Yes, Holmes, and I'll give him some digitalis. A fellow with a bad heart like this shouldn't allow himself to get so excited.
Here you are, Mr. Stuart. Drink this.
That's it. And now this, Mr. Stuart.
What is it?
It's digitalis.
Very well.
There now. Feel better, sir?
Yes, Mr. Holmes. Yes, I do. You're right. I shouldn't get so excited. My heart can't stand it, you know.
Watson, is he well enough to talk, do you think?
Yes, if he doesn't excite himself again.
I'll be careful, Doctor. I'll take it quietly. Mr. Holmes, when you saw my card just now, did it strike any responsive chord?
Oh, naturally, sir. Who could fail to be intrigued when a James Stuart calls to see one on Guy Fawkes Day?
It isn't just coincidence that my name is James Stuart. I've got royal blood in my veins. People know of it. And that's another reason they're out to kill me. They're jealous of my heritage. Every instinct I have is a royal one. Now, you gentlemen know that falconry is a king's sport. And my greatest hobby is the breeding and the training of falcons.
Mr. Stuart, owing to the state of your health, I suggest that you be as economical as possible in your explanation. In fact, I think it might be better if I were to question you.
Very well, Mr. Holmes.
Now, you say that your life is in danger. What evidence do you have to substantiate that claim?
My cousin, Guy Falconby, has threatened it. You see, Mr. Holmes, he and I are the only heirs to a wealthy uncle. His fortune will go to the surviving heir. If I were dead, Guy would inherit everything.
Seems to me, Mr. Stuart, that you should have applied to Scotland Yard for protection.
I did, Dr. Watson. Only a few days ago I saw a certain Inspector Lestrade, I think his name was, and he laughed at my fears.
Oh, Lestrade. And he laughed, did he? Well, then in that case, there may be something in your story, sir. You say that your cousin has threatened to kill you. Has he indicated the method he intends to employ?
He has. And it's a devilish plot. Guy has a bitter, twisted sense of humor, gentlemen, even when he's planning as dastardly a thing as a murder. I am James Stuart. He is Guy Falconby, which is near enough to Guy Fawkes. Today is the 5th of November, and he's planning to blow me up.
Oh, come, sir. You can't expect us to believe that.
But it's true. He warned me. And the celebrations that are going on in the streets of London today would make a rare cloak for his activities.
I must confess, Mr. Stuart, that I find your story most unconvincing. All your evidence appears to depend on conversations held between you and this cousin of yours. You have no facts, sir. to substantiate your claims.
But I have.
Then please let us hear them.
I live at 23 Cavendish Square. A week ago, the house next door to me was let to a new tenant. Almost immediately, workmen became very active there. They were digging in the cellars, Mr. Holmes. I could hear the sounds of picks and shovels through the walls.
Digging in the cellars? That does sound significant, doesn't it, Holmes?
Extremely. Did you observe any other activities of the workmen, Mr. Stewart?
Aye, Mr. Holmes. Vans have been delivering large packing cases to the basement during the last 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
I know what's in them, too. It's gunpowder. I tell you, they're planning to blow me up today.
No. Steady. You mustn't excite yourself again.
What shall I do, Mr. Holmes?
I think, sir, it would be better for you to rest here for a while and then go to a nearby hotel. I would suggest the Shaftesbury. And wait there until you hear from us.
And where are you gentlemen going?
Watson and I, after donning suitable disguises, will visit the house adjoining yours in Cavendish Square. I think an examination of the cellar there might prove most illuminating.
This must be the house, all right, Holmes. The empty packing cases are still by the foot of the basement steps.
Come on, Watson. Let's go down and explore.
Pardon my soul, I feel a little self-conscious in these clothes.
No need to, my dear chap. You look a most authentic inspector of plumbing.
Well,
if anyone challenges us, you'd better let me do the talking, though. I think my accent might be a little more convincing. Shh. Listen.
I can't hear anything.
Exactly. Then we may reasonably assume that either the workmen are observing the Guy Fawkes holiday or that their work is done. Come on, let's try this door.
It's unlocked.
Yes. Oh, this is too easy, Watson. We must be prepared for a trap. Come on.
I've got my revolver handy if there's any trouble.
I don't use it until I tell you to. Remember, we're supposed to be plumbing inspectors.
Pitch black in here. I can't see a thing.
Strike a match. See if you can find a gas jet.
Strike a match when the cellar may be full of gunpowder?
Can't take the risk, old chap.
Oh, here's a gas jet. I'll light it. That's better. Now we can see a little.
Uh-huh. I think the workmen have completed their job. See that new wood forming a crude door in the corner over there?
Where does it lead to, do you suppose?
Let's find out. Oh, also unlocked. And here's a miner's lantern, waiting conveniently for us on this ledge. Oh, this is ridiculously easy. Now I'm sure it's a trap.
I like the lantern. Great Scott, it's a tunnel.
Yes, it's a tunnel leading into Mr. Stewart's house next door. Let's explore it.
Look, Holmes. Look at the barrels. I bet they're full of gunpowder.
Undoubtedly. You will observe the fuses as well. Yes, the complete equipment for another gunpowder plot.
I can't believe my eyes. What a fantastic plan, but how could the murderer be certain that Stewart would be killed in the explosion?
I think that's easily answered, Watson. Remember Mr. Stewart's bad heart? In his present state of apprehension, an exploding firecracker would be enough to kill him.
Oh, I suppose so. Hello? What's this lying on the floor? Curious. It's a funny strip of silk with a little ring on the end.
Let me see it, Watson. Aha. This seems to be familiar. By Jove! I believe it's a Jess.
A Jess? What on earth's that?
The last piece of evidence necessary to confirm the conclusion...
Come out of there! And keep your hands above your heads! I've got a revolver!
Right, you Governor. We ain't doing no harm. Now, remember, Watson, I'll do the talking.
Come on! Out you come! Well, you're a comical-looking pair. What are you doing in there?
Me and my mate got a message to come over here and see to the plumbing, mister.
Plumbers, eh? You have any identification?
Yes, sir. Here's my badge. We're inspectors for the London County Council.
Oh, that's all right, my man. I saw the basement door open, and I thought burglars might be here.
You're the owner of this house, sir?
Yes, but my agent let it recently to some tenants who've been behaving rather queerly, I'm told.
So I came round here to see what was happening.
If you're the owner, sir, perhaps you can give me some facts for me records. Gotta fill me records, you know.
What do you want to know?
Well, your name, please, sir.
Falconby. Guy Falconby.
Look here.
Alfie, hold your nose.
What did he say?
Nothing, sir, nothing. He's got bad hiccups. Had him for months now. Can't stop him. Alfie, here, give me a pencil, will you? Thank you, Alf. Now, sir, your name is Guy Falconby. What's the name of the tenant this house is let to?
There are 3 of them.
Oh, do you know their names, sir? Got to have them for me records, you see.
Yes, the names are Winter, Rokewood, and Keynes.
Oh, yes. Winter, Rokewood, and Keynes. That's right, sir. Sounds as if they might be a firm of solicitors, don't they, sir?
Well, perhaps they are. I haven't met them.
Just one more question, sir, and then I needn't bother you no more.
Well, what is it? My religion or my grandmother's maiden name?
No, sir. No, nothing like that. I just wondered who lived in the house next door on that side. We've had a complaint from there, too. Their pipes is bunged up.
My cousin lives there. His name's James Stewart.
Mr. James Stewart, eh? Oh, much obliged, sir. Me and my mate will be going next door, then. Come on, Alfie.
I'm not surprised his pipes are bunged up, as you so graphically put it. He's a great one for practical jokes about the house. As a matter of fact, he's planning one of them tonight. Well, that's no concern of yours. By the way, my man, what's your name?
Nivitt, sir. Tom Nivitt. Come on, Alfie. We got work to do.
Holmes, I wish you'd tell me what's going on. Why have we taken this cab back to Baker Street?
Get out of these clothes. They've served their purpose. Now there's more serious work afoot.
Well, I'm still confused about our interview with Guy Falconby. Why did you say your name was Tom Nivitt?
More touch of vanity, old fellow.
Vanity? How do you mean?
Well, consider the names in this case so far, Watson. James Stewart says that he's been threatened by Guy Falconby. A name, as Mr. Stewart points out, not unlike Guy Fawkes. Do you recall the names of the 3 tenants that Mr. Falconby gave us a few minutes ago?
Yes. Winter, Rokewood, and Keynes. But what's that got to do with it?
A great deal, my dear fellow. Thomas Winter, Ambrose Rokewood, and Robert Keynes were the 3 men executed with Guy Fawkes in the original Gunpowder plot in 1605.
Good Lord, but where does Tom Nivitt, the name you gave yourself, fit into the picture?
Thomas Nivitt was the Westminster magistrate who arrested the conspirators. Since the would-be murderer has such an academic knowledge of the original plot, I thought I'd let him know that he was up against an opponent worthy of his steel.
We'll hear the rest of Dr. Watson's story in just a few seconds. Just about time for me to remind you that if you want a wine that's sure to please the ladies, you can't miss with Petri California Muscatel. That's because Petri Muscatel is a golden wine with one of the most luscious flavors you ever tasted. Did you ever taste a big, plump muscat grape that's ripened in the sun? If you have, then you know what to expect when you taste Petri Muscatel. It's a wonderful wine, perfect after dinner and swell when company comes. Just remember that, won't you? Petri Muscatel. Well, Doctor, you and Mr. Holmes were certainly having yourselves quite a Guy Fawkes day. What happened when you got back to Baker Street?
We quickly changed out of our disguises and back into our ordinary clothes. I was still pretty much in the dark, as usual. And I kept questioning Holmes as to our next move. He was in a state of suppressed excitement. And it was obvious as he spoke to me that he was anxious to be off.
Watson, don't dawdle. There's so much work ahead of us.
What do you mean, don't dawdle? I'm not dawdling. I'm dressing as fast as I can. What's our next move, anyway?
Well, we must split our forces. Must get hold of my band of street urchins, the Baker Street Irregulars. I'm going to surround Mr. Stewart's house in Cavendish Square, and they'll be invaluable for that purpose.
Well, what do you want me to do?
Go to the Shaftesbury Hotel and collect Mr. Stewart, then return with him to his house and wait me there. I shall join you as soon as I've rounded up the irregulars, but I must warn you. Don't leave Mr. Stewart for a moment. Don't let him out of your sight until you see me again.
Of course I won't, Holmes, but, I must say, the idea of all that gunpowder in the cellar doesn't make me feel any too happy.
Have faith in me, old chap. Have faith in me. You know, I wouldn't expose you to any danger if I could avoid it. And I assure you that I shall join you and Mr. Stewart very shortly. You have your revolver?
Yes, of course.
Good. And, give Mr. Stewart this revolver, will you? Tell him that I insist that he carries it. I fear that his own has probably been tampered with.
Right you are, Holmes. I'll see that he has it. This is a strange business, I must say. That Guy Fawkes seemed such a decent sort of fellow.
Yes, he appeared to be a most amiable fellow, didn't he? This is indeed an unusual case, Watson. We're up against one of the most sinister and twisted antagonists that we've ever met. Well, old chap, I'm leaving now. I'll join you soon. And don't forget, stay close to Mr. Stewart. Stay very close to him.
Dr. Watson, I wish your friend were here.
No. Don't get so excited, Mr. Stewart. You'll be here any moment now. You've still got the revolver that I gave you?
Yes, it's in my pocket. But what's the good of a revolver if there should be an explosion? Answer me that if you can.
No, you must have faith in Mr. Holmes, sir. He's arranging now to have this house of yours surrounded by his band of street urchins. They'll see that no one gets to the cellar next door to light the fuses.
A bunch of children. How can they do anything?
You don't know the Baker Street irregulars, Mr. Stewart. And it's a perfect day for them to operate. As black-faced boys begging for pennies, they'd pass unnoticed anywhere.
I hope you're right. But I have a premonition, Doctor. There's going to be a tragedy. I know it.
Now, take it easy, sir. Remember your heart. You're in splendid hands when Sherlock Holmes is on the case. Here he is now. Holmes, I say, I'm glad to see you.
You received your visitor yet?
Visitor? We've seen no one.
Then be on the alert. I've just been questioning the boys surrounding this house. A few moments ago, some children pulled a small cart up to the back door. A cart containing a life-size dummy. My irregulars thought that it was an effigy on its way to a bonfire.
Oh, why shouldn't it be, Holmes?
I have reason to believe that it's someone visiting you in disguise, Mr. Stewart. A visitor who is mounting the back stairs at this very moment.
You've got to stand by me, Holmes. You've got to protect me.
Don't worry, sir. Come in.
Look at that apparition.
Great Scott, a Guy Fawkes dummy. A dark lantern in his hand, and it's walking.
And also talking, I trust.
Keep away from me. I got a revolver.
Stick for a stake for Victoria's sake. If you won't give me one, I'll take two. The better for me and the worse for you.
It's Guy Fawkes.
Keep away from me, do you hear?
The better for me and the worse for you.
All right, then. I'm going to fire.
Dear me, Mr. Stewart, the revolver I provided for you seems to be unloaded. How very odd.
Well, what in thunder's all this about?
You've just witnessed an attempted murder, Watson.
Murder? What are you talking about? This is a game. James and I had it arranged, the whole thing.
You may have thought it was a game, Mr. Falconby, but I assure you that your cousin... Grab Mr. Stewart, Watson. He seems to be leaving us.
Leave me alone. Take your hands off me. My heart.
Here, help me put him on the sofa. That's it. I'll get him some digitalis.
Look, I don't want to appear unnecessarily stupid, but will someone tell me what this is all about?
With pleasure, Mr. Falconby. Your cousin had planned one of the most fantastic murder plots that I've ever encountered. He came to us with the story that you had threatened his life.
But that's ridiculous. I'm very fond of him.
Of course it's ridiculous. The whole plot was ridiculous. He leased the house next door, had a tunnel dug, and gunpowder and fuses planted there. Even entered the name of the tenants as Winter, Rokewood, and Keynes to give the apparent plot a further authenticity.
You mean my cousin was the real tenant?
Certainly he was. However, he was clumsy enough to drop that piece of silk with the wire ring on the end that you found in the cellar, Watson.
The thing you called a jess.
And what's a jess?
It's a strap that goes round a falcon's leg to which its leash is fastened. You will remember that Mr. Stewart informed us that falconry is his hobby, and it therefore indicated that he had been in the cellar and consequently must have known about the whole plot.
And all he was trying to do was to build up in our minds the belief that his cousin was trying to kill him.
Exactly, my dear fellow. Had we believed him, of course, he could have shot you just now, Mr. Falconby, in apparent self-defense.
Good Lord, what a fantastic plot. I still can't quite believe
Mr.
it.
Falconby, why are you dressed as a Guy Fawkes dummy?
Well, it was James's idea. He said that he was going to dress up too, and that we were to go round the bonfires tonight and frighten people by appearing as live dummies. But the last message he sent told me to come up here, that we'd play a practical joke on a couple of friends of his.
Did he provide you with the costume that you're wearing?
Yes, as a matter of fact, he did.
Have you searched the pockets for any weapons?
No, but I will.
All right, and while you're doing that, I'll examine this dark lantern. How's your patient, Watson?
Well, I've given him some digitalis. And now I'll get him some brandy.
I can't find anything in the pockets.
Here's the answer, my friends. Look here. Inside the lantern is a dagger. Your cousin planted it there to substantiate the claim that you were trying to kill him. Had his plans worked, You would have been dead, Mr. Falconby, before you could have told us the truth.
Here, come back here, Mr. Stewart.
James! He slipped out of the door.
Confound it! He's faking the heart attack. Come on, Watson, after him.
Holmes, where are you? Out of the way, please.
Blimey. Here comes the Lord Mayor of London, chums.
Excuse me, please. I'm trying to find a friend of mine. Most important. Holmes, where are you? Get out here, Watson.
I hear you calling me.
Out of the way, please. I'm coming, Holmes.
Why don't you send him a postcard?
You got away from me in the crowd.
I'm afraid Mr. Stewart got away from us.
Well, we'll never find him in this mark.
Not to, old fellow. He's a dangerous man. There's no knowing what he may do. Where are the irregulars? Ah, there's Wiggins.
Wiggins?
Hello, Mr. Holmes.
Wiggins.
Dr. Watson.
Did you see a man run out of that house a few minutes ago?
No, Governor. Perhaps Charlie did. Hey, Charlie, come over here a minute. It's Mr. Holmes. All right. I bet Charlie didn't see anything, though. He's got some savvy girl with him. Hello, Mr. Holmes and Dr. Watson.
Hello, Charlie.
Hello, Charlie.
Did you see a man run through this crowd a few minutes ago? A tallish man with a gray mustache?
Yes, I did. A man came running out of the house over there. That's the house. Where'd he go? He ran down toward where the shops are. And he stole our dummy, did? The one we are going to burn in the bonfire. I tried to stop him, but he got away.
Holmes, look up there on the roof. There's a figure. By Jove, I believe it's James Stewart.
That's the man. He's the one that stole our dummy. He's standing up on the roof. He's going to jump. If he does, he's going to land in the bonfire.
There he goes. He is jumping. Right into the middle of the fire.
It's awful. He'll be burned to death.
Don't worry, Wiggins. There wasn't a man who fell into the bonfire.
What do you mean?
From the gyrations that the figure performed as it fell, my dear Watson, I'm convinced that Mr. Stewart threw the stolen dummy to try and put us off the track.
Then Stewart's still up there.
He is, Watson. Come along, old boy. It's up on the rooftops for us. Up on the rooftops. Here, Watson. Let me help you up. Can you reach my hand?
Yeah, I got it.
All right, then. Up you come. Come on. That's it.
Phew. Seems to me that fire escapes must be designed for giants.
Keep your eyes skinned, old fellow. Stewart's a dangerous man. Might be hiding behind those chimney stacks. Come on.
Upon my soul, this is a strange place to be on Guy Fawkes night.
Yes, a comprehensive case, Watson. Starts in a cellar and ends on a rooftop.
Look, Holmes. By the parapet there.
The crumpled body of Mr. Stewart.
Looks to me as if it... Yes. He's dead, Holmes.
Well, it's not surprising. The effort of carrying the dummy up here and throwing it, combined with his own state of excitement, were too much for him. Well, quite frankly, I can't say that I'm sorry.
No, he planned a murder. If it hadn't been for you, he would have succeeded. An extraordinary case, Holmes.
Yes, old chap, and one that should long make us remember the 5th of November.
By Jove, yes.
Please to remember the 5th of November. Gunpowder, treason, and plot. I see no reason why gunpowder treason should ever be forgotten.
Well, Doctor, as you boys would say, that story was a bit of exciting, what?
Yes, and even now I sort of lose my breath when I remember climbing that fire escape.
You know, Doctor, those two fellas certainly went out of their way to celebrate Guy Fawkes' Day. Now, take me. When I got a little celebrating to do, I like to do it quietly. Some friends, a glass of port.
Yeah, Petri port, of course.
What else?
Leave it to you. No matter what the occasion is, you can somehow make it a perfect occasion for Petri wine. How do you do it, old fella?
Don't ask me how I do it. You mean, how does the Petri family do it? How can they make such swell wine? Well, the answer is experience. The Petri family has been making fine wine for generations. And ever since they first established the Petri business way back in the 1800s, they've handed on down from father to son, the fine art of turning luscious, sun-ripened California grapes into fragrant, delicious wine. That's why when you want a wine for any occasion, before dinner, with your meals, or after dinner, You can't go wrong with a Petri wine because Petri took time to bring you good wine. And now, Dr. Watson, what Sherlock Holmes adventure are you going to tell us next week?
An old favorite, Mr. Bartell, a story that concerns strange music that was heard in a lonely house in the English countryside, and of the living death that stalked there. I call it The Adventure of the Speckled Band.
Tonight's Sherlock Holmes adventure is written by Dennis Green and Anthony Boucher and was suggested by an incident in this Arthur Conan Doyle story, The Adventure of the Devil's Foot. Music was by Dean Fossler. Mr. Rathbone appears through the courtesy of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer and Mr. Bruce through the courtesy of Universal Pictures, where they are now starring in the Sherlock Holmes series. The Petri Wine Company of San Francisco, California, invites you to tune in again next week, same time, same station. This is Harry Bartell saying goodnight for the Petri family. Sherlock Holmes comes to you from our Hollywood studio. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System. This episode from the life of Sherlock Holmes will be transmitted to our men and women overseas by shortwave and through the worldwide facilities of the Armed Forces Radio Service. Petri Wine brings you Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce in the new adventures of Sherlock Holmes. The Petri family, the family that took time to bring you good wine, invites you to listen to Dr. Watson tell us another exciting adventure he shared with his old friend, that master detective, Sherlock Holmes. And if you don't mind, I'd like to suggest something that you might share with your friends. And that something is a glass of sherry before dinner. Naturally, a glass of Petri California sherry. I say Petri sherry because it's the perfect before-dinner wine. You couldn't think of a better way to begin a meal. That Petri sherry has a beautiful, inviting color, like dark amber. And for flavor, well, you've heard sherry described many times as having a rich, nut-like flavor. But if you want to learn for the first time what those words rich and nut-like really mean, you just taste Petri sherry. It's wonderful. Serve Petri sherry by itself, or serve it with hors d'oeuvres or those little cocktail sandwiches. And incidentally, if you prefer your sherry dry, not sweet, just ask your wine merchant for Petri Pale Dry Sherry. Well, the important thing to remember is if you want sherry, you want Petri sherry, because that means good sherry. And now let's look in on our genial friend and good host, Dr. Watson. Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening, Mr. Bartell. Punctual to the minute, as usual.
Never keep a doctor waiting, I always say. Particularly Dr. Watson.
Draw up a chair, my boy.
Thank you.
That's it.
All ready to tell us the Sherlock Holmes adventure of the Speckled Band, Doctor?
Yes, I'm all ready, Mr. Bartell.
Say, Doctor, just what does the Speckled Band mean?
You wait until I've told you the story, young fellow, my lad. You'll find out for yourself.
I'm sorry. The floor is all yours, Doctor.
The adventure of the Speckled Band began on a rainy April morning in 1883. An urgent call from one of my patients had kept me up most of the night before, and in consequence, I came down to my breakfast rather later than usual to find that Holmes had already left our house some hours earlier. As I sat there reading the morning paper and consuming my 2 lightly boiled eggs, there was a knock at the door. It opened to disclose a typical example of the British working man, a bag of tools in one hand and a grimy cap in the other, as he spoke to me from the doorway.
You sent for me, Mr. Holmes?
I'm not Mr. Holmes.
Oh, beg your pardon, Governor. But I've come to mend the gas bracket over the mantelpiece.
Oh? What's wrong with it?
I've got a leak in it.
Oh, Leek, well, get along with your work.
Yes, sir. Hope I won't be disturbing you, sir.
No, that's all right, my man. Don't mind me.
Oh, dear. Very untidy man, Mr. Holmes, sir.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you can't help noticing the mess this room's in. I've heard say he was as tidy as any when he started, but he learned bad habits from a bloke what lived with him. Dr. Watson, I think his name is.
You impertinent fellow. How dare you talk to me like that? I've got a good... Oh, where does he go to? Here, you come out of there. That's Mr. Holmes's room.
Don't be angry with me, Watson. Just slipping out of these grimy rags into a dressing gown.
Good gracious me. So was you, Holmes. Well, upon my soul, I'd never recognized you, but why the disguise?
A case, my dear Watson, a case. One of those small problems which a trusting public occasionally confides to my investigation. To the British workman, old chap, all doors are open. His costume is unostentatious and his habits are sociable. Tool bag is an excellent passport, and a tawny moustache will secure the cooperation of the maids.
But what's the case, Holmes?
A modest little drama of life in the kitchen, one of those seemingly inconsequential affairs, and yet, Watson, the honor of a duchess is at stake.
Duchess?
A mad world, my masters, a mad world. Now I feel a little more comfortable. Let's return to the sitting room, shall we? A strong cup of tea would be most acceptable.
Oh, I wish you'd tell me about the Duchess and life in the kitchen, Holmes.
Some other time, old fellow, some other time. At the moment, suppose you tell me what you know about Miss Helen Stoner. I received a letter from her this morning in which she informed me that she would be calling here at 11, and also that she was a friend of yours.
Helen Stoner? Oh, yes. A charming girl indeed.
Pour me a cup of tea, Watson, and tell me about her.
Well, I befriended her at the time of the tragic death of her sister 2 years ago. I told you about the case, don't you remember? The sudden death of Violet Stoner at an old house in Stoke Moran.
Oh, yes. It all comes back to me now. There was an inquest, wasn't there, with a string of stupid, ineffective witnesses.
Oh, ineffective? I was one of them.
Oh, I'm sorry, old fellow. Then you were the exception, of course. Wait a minute. Let me see. I docketed the evidence on the case. Where is it? My scrapbook. Here we are. Let me see. Yes, S. Salisbury, Hatchet, Murder, Lord St. Simon. Here we are. Stoke Moran. Yes, I remember the affair well now. The villain of the piece was Dr. Grimsby Roylott, wasn't he?
Yes, a dreadful fellow. He's the stepfather of the two girls. Violet, the one that died so mysteriously, and Helen, the one who's coming here to see you.
Dr. Roylott has a pretty record. 55 years of age, killed his kit Magar in India, once in an insane asylum, married money, wife died, distinguished surgeon. Well, Watson, I wonder what the distinguished surgeon has been up to now.
Oh, some deviltry, I fear.
Why do you say that?
You remember that Miss Violet Stoner's death followed close upon the announcement of her engagement?
Yes.
Well, I met Miss Helen Stoner on the streets a few weeks ago. She told me that she'd just become engaged to a young fellow in the army who was leaving for the Far East. She was very upset at the thought of being alone with her stepfather at Stoke Moran.
Oh, naturally she was. Dr. Roylott stands to lose a considerable sum of money in the event of his stepdaughter's marriage.
Yes, they both had a trust fund which he administered only as long as the girls were unmarried. That fact was brought out at the coroner's inquest 2 years ago. But if Roylott did poison the other stepdaughter, and I'm pretty convinced that he did, it seems unlikely that he'd try it again. 2 sudden deaths in the same household could hardly pass the coroner.
Oh, no, my dear Watson. You're making the mistake of putting your normal brain into Roylott's abnormal being.
Oh, that must be Miss Stoner now.
Yes, let me see. It's precisely 11 o'clock. Well, let's see what we can do for her.
Well, I hope you can help her, Holmes. She's an extremely nice girl.
Come in. Yes, Mrs. Hudson?
There's a Miss Helen Stoner to see you, sir. She says she has an appointment.
Show her in, please, Mrs. Hudson.
Aye, sir. Come in, my dear.
Thank you.
Miss Stoner, I'm so glad to see you again.
How do you do, Dr. Watson? And this must be your friend.
Yes, Miss Stoner, I'm Sherlock Holmes. Sit down by the fire, won't you?
Yes, please do, my dear. Hello, you're trembling with cold.
It's not cold that makes me shiver. Tell me, Mr. Holmes, has my stepfather, Dr. Grimsby Roylott, been here?
No, he hasn't.
He saw me in the street. I dashed by him in a hansom cab, but he saw me. Our eyes met and he waved me to stop, but I came here as fast as I could.
Very sensible move. Dr. Watson has already given me several hints as to your present problem, as well as having refreshed my memory as to the circumstances of your sister's death.
My problem is a simple enough one, Mr. Holmes. I'm I'm waiting to be murdered.
No, my dear
Please be
girl.
a trifle more explicit, Miss Stoner.
Very well, Mr. Holmes. My fiancé is leaving for the Far East today. When he leaves, I shall be alone with my stepfather at Stoke Moran. He plans to murder me just as he murdered my sister.
What makes you say that, Miss Stoner?
Many strange things have happened recently. For instance, he's just moved me into the bedroom in which my sister died.
What reason did he give for changing your room?
That my old one needed repainting. It didn't need it, but Dr. Roylott did need to move me into that horrible room. And other things have happened. I've heard the music again.
Music? What music?
My sister first heard it a few days before she died. I heard it myself on that dreadful night she breathed her last. Oh, Mr. Holmes, I'm terrified.
Don't worry, my dear. Please don't worry anymore. You have friends to help you now. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions?
No, of course not.
Now, this music, does it seem to come from inside the house or outside?
Well, it's hard to say. It sounds so faint.
What's it like?
A sort of soft droning sound.
Like a flute or a pipe?
Yes, it reminds me of native music I heard during my childhood in India.
India, eh? Oh.
There's one other thing that puzzles me, Mr. Holmes.
Now, what's that?
My sister's dying words. As she lay in my arms, she gasped out 2 words.
Oh, what were they?
Banned and speckled. You remember that evidence from the inquest, don't you, Dr. Watson?
Yes, I do. I couldn't make head or tail of it. So?
Band, speckled, Indian music. Miss Stoner, do you sleep with your door and windows fastened?
Yes, Mr. Holmes, but so did poor Violet. It didn't save her, though.
What did you gather from your sister's dying allusion to the band, the speckled band?
Well, sometimes I thought it was merely the wild talk of delirium, and sometimes that it referred to a band of people.
Oh, yes.
I remember that there were some gypsies encamped quite near us at the time of Violet's death.
Gypsies, eh?
Yes, and it occurred to me that the spotted, gaily colored kerchiefs, which so many of them wear over their heads, might have suggested the unusual adjective which my sister used.
Miss Stoner, how long is it since you heard this strange music that you've told us about?
I heard it last night.
And your fiancé leaves today, you say?
Yes, Mr. Holmes.
Well, Miss Stoner, I shall do everything I can to help you. If we were to come to Stoke Moran today, would it be possible to see over your rooms without the knowledge of your stepfather?
I think so. He told me this morning that he intended to take a late train home tonight.
Ah, that's splendid. Watson, out with the timetable, old fellow, and look up the trains to Stoke Moran.
Right you are, Holmes.
That's my stepfather. I know it is. Oh, yes. Yes, there he is on the doorstep. Oh, Mr. Holmes, he's followed me. Oh, what shall I do if he finds me here?
Don't worry, Miss Stoner. Please don't worry. There's a private exit through that room there. Watson, show her the way, will you?
Come along with me, my dear young lady.
And you will come down today, Mr. Holmes?
Certainly, my dear Miss Stoner. I'll telegraph you the time of our arrival. Goodbye and courage, my dear.
Goodbye, Mr. Holmes, and thank you.
Come along, Miss Stoner, quickly.
Come in. Yes, Mrs. Hudson?
It's a gentleman, sir. I told him you wouldn't see anyone without an appointment, but he...
Out of the way, woman!
Didn't push me like that. I'm sorry, Mr. Holmes.
That's all right, Mrs. Hudson. You can leave us.
What kind of gentleman does he call himself, pushing an old lady?
So you're Sherlock Holmes.
You have the advantage of me, sir. Your name is...
My name, sir, is Roylott. Dr. Grimsby Roylott of Stoke Moran.
Oh, yes, of course. A charming place, I hear, and obviously good for the lungs.
You won't trifle with me if you know what's good for you.
Watson, there you are. And how was the experiment?
Very successful, Holmes. Good day to you, Dr. Roylott. I haven't seen you since I gave evidence at your stepdaughter's inquest.
Yes, I remember you, Dr. Watson. Now listen to me, you two. My stepdaughter's been here. I've traced her. What's she been saying to you?
A little cold for this time of the year, isn't it?
You answer me!
I hear that the crocuses promise well.
You dare to try and put me off, do you? I know you, you scoundrel. You're Holmes the meddler.
Am I?
Holmes the busybody.
I believe that a man should occupy his time.
Holmes the Scotland Yard Jack in office.
When you go out, close the door, won't you? There's a draft.
I'll go when I've had my say. Keep your nose out of my affairs, do you hear?
Oh, yes, my hearing is excellent, thank you, and your diction and delivery most forceful. But time flies, my dear doctor, time flies, and life has its duties as well as its pleasures. Goodbye.
Insolent rascal. Here, see this poker?
Oh, the fire doesn't need poking, thank you, Doctor. But I should be obliged if you'd put some more coal on for me.
You laugh at me. You don't know my strength. Look. There. Your poker's bent double. And that's what I'll do to both of you. you don't keep out of my affairs...
I had a presentiment that he'd slam the door.
Phew. He's an ugly customer, eh, Holmes?
Literally as well as figuratively. Watson, I'd be much obliged if you'd get your revolver. It may prove to be an excellent argument with a gentleman who twists iron pokers into knots.
The fellow's amazingly strong. Just look at it.
I don't want to appear flamboyant, but, there we are.
Great Scott, Holmes. You straightened the poker out again.
Yes, it was utterly useless in its former shape. And now what's on the timetable? We'll catch the next fast train to Stoke Moran.
Oh, Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, I'm so relieved that you've come. But don't you think my stepfather might have followed you down here?
You have to take that chance, Miss Stoner. A few hours' delay might mean the difference between your life and death. It was imperative that we examine this bedroom of yours before Dr. Roylott returns.
Anyway, my dear, you mustn't worry any more. We're here in your house, and we're going to take good care of you, no matter what harm befalls you.
Thank you, Dr. Watson.
So this is the room in which your sister died, is it? It's much as I pictured it.
And Dr. Roylott's room adjoins this one, you say, Miss Turner?
Yes, Doctor, on that side. The room which adjoins it on the other side is my regular bedroom.
The one that's being so conveniently painted, eh?
Yes.
Well, let's examine this room. No trapdoors or sliding panels, I suppose.
It sounds solid enough, Holmes.
Yes, I think it is. Hello, what's this? Are you aware that this bed is clamped to the floor, Miss Stoner?
Why, no, Mr. Holmes, I didn't know that.
What an extraordinary thing.
Was the bed in your other room anchored also?
No, I don't think it was.
Very illuminating. And this bell pull hanging against the wall above your bed.
Oh, it doesn't work.
Doesn't work, but if you want to ring.
There's another one on the other wall over there.
Now, why this one?
Well, I don't know. My stepfather made a number of changes after we came here.
Yes, quite a burst of activity, apparently. And it took some strange shapes.
Why are you standing on the bed, Holmes?
I'm curious, my dear fellow. Aha. It may interest you to know that this bell rope is fastened to a brass hook. There's no wire attachment. It's a dummy.
A dummy? But why?
There's a small screen above it. It's a ventilator, I suppose.
Yes, Mr. Holmes.
Yes. A ventilator leading into your stepfather's room. Curious. I notice there's no means of opening the ventilator on this side. It can only be operated from your stepfather's room next door. I wonder if you'd mind taking us in there.
Of course, Mr. Holmes. Follow me.
What do you make of it, Holmes?
There's devil's work afoot, old chap.
Here we are, Mr. Holmes.
It's much the same as the other room. A bit bigger, perhaps.
That large safe against the wall seems to be an unusual piece of bedroom furniture. What is it, Miss Stoner?
My stepfather's business papers.
Oh, yes.
You've seen inside it, then?
Only once, some years ago. I remember that it was full of documents.
What's this saucer of milk doing on top of it? Does Dr. Roylott keep a cat?
No, but he does have a cheetah and a baboon as pets. He brought them with him from India.
Well, Holmes, a cheetah is just a big cat.
True, but I doubt if a saucer of milk would go very far in satisfying the appetite of a cheetah. Well, I think I've seen enough. This matter is too serious for hesitation. Your life may depend upon your following of my instructions, Miss Homer.
I'll do anything you say, Mr. Holmes, anything.
Is that village inn I see through the trees from this window?
Yes, the Queen's Arms.
Your bedroom windows would be visible from there.
Yes, Mr. Holmes.
Very well, then. Watson and I will go there now and obtain accommodations. When your stepfather returns, you must confine yourself to your room on the pretense of a headache. You follow me?
Perfectly.
When Dr. Roylott returns for the night, you must open your bedroom window and put your lamp on the sill as a signal to us at the inn. Then withdraw quietly to your usual bedroom, the one that's being painted. I'm sure that you could manage there for one night.
Of course. But what will you do?
When we get your signal, Dr. Watson and I will come here and spend the night in your dead sister's room. We are going to solve this mystery of the dummy bell rope and the unusual ventilator and the strange music in the night.
You'll hear the remainder of Dr. Watson's story in just a second, so I'm just going to point out that at any really important dinner, you know, like when diplomats get together, you'll find wine on the table. Because for years it's been a known fact that good wine makes good food taste better. Prove that to yourself tomorrow night by having your dinner together with a glass of Petri wine. If you prefer a red wine for any meat or meat dish, Try a Petri California Burgundy. That rich, hearty red Petri Burgundy is really out of this world. Now, if you'd rather have a subtle, intriguing white wine, let's say to go with chicken or fish, then try Petri California Sauterne. But Sauterne or Burgundy, to make sure it's good, make sure it's Petri, won't you? Well, Doctor, it's a rattling good story so far. What happened next? You went to the local inn, I guess, and waited for that lantern to appear in the bedroom window at Dr. Roylott's house?
That's right, Mr. Bartell. We had an early dinner at the Queen's Arms and then retired to our upstairs bedroom and sat there side by side, puffing away at our pipes, our eyes straining through the darkness for that telltale lantern to give us the signal that there was dangerous work ahead for us. As we sat there discussing the various aspects of the case, I remember that Holmes was very concerned about my own safety.
Watson, I really have some scruples about taking you with me tonight. This is an infernally dangerous business.
What about that poor girl, alone in the house with that fiend Roylott?
I can handle the case by myself, old chap.
I'm coming with you, Holmes. You speak of danger. You evidently seen more in those rooms than was visible to me.
No, but possibly I've deduced a little more. I imagine you saw all that I did.
Well, I saw nothing remarkable except the bell rope, and what purpose that could answer, I confess, is more than I can imagine.
You saw the ventilator, too.
Yes, but I don't think it's such an unusual thing to have an opening between two rooms. It's so small that a mouse could hardly pass through it.
True, but at least you will admit there was a curious sequence of coincidences. A ventilator is constructed. A bell cord is hung from it. A lady sleeps in a bed directly below the ventilator, a bed that is anchored to the floor. The lady dies.
Well, I begin to see what you're driving at, Holmes. Look. There's the lantern in Miss Toner's window.
That's our signal, all right. Come on, Watson. Our night's vigil begins.
What a foul night.
Foul night for foul business, Watson. Come on, through these laurel bushes. It's only another 50 yards to the house.
Yes, the lantern's still burning away in the bedroom window.
Yes, all the other lights are out.
Including the one in Dr. Roylott's room. He must have gone to sleep.
To bed, possibly, Watson, but not, I think, to sleep.
Great heavens, Holmes. Look at that frightful creature leaping about in the moonlight. It looks like some hideous child.
That's Dr. Roylott's pet baboon.
Well, it looks positively human.
Yes, probably a great deal more so than its master. Shh. They're directly below the window now. This ivy provides a most convenient ladder. I'll go up first.
Careful, Holmes, careful. Wait a minute. I hope the thing's strong enough to hold us both. We look pretty stupid on our backs in the mud. Give me a hand, will you, Holmes? I can't quite get my leg up over this window ledge. Here you are. Thanks, old boy. Oh, say, phew.
Now to close the window shutters.
This room looks exactly like the same as it did this afternoon.
Shh. The least sound would be fatal to our plans. Keep the lamp covered, so that if the ventilator is open from Dr. Roylott's room, no light will show from in there. That's it.
Why are you carrying that stick, Holmes?
I'm prepared for a visitor that I expect before the night is over. A visitor who will herald his entrance with faint music from an Indian pipe.
You mean the music is a signal?
Exactly, old fellow. The signal to an accomplice who can enter a room with locked doors, an accomplice who kills and leaves no trace.
You mean that...
Shh! No more talking, Watson. I'll sit on the edge of the bed here. You sit on that chair. Have your revolver ready in case you should need it.
Right you are.
Have the lantern ready, too. When I shout now, turn the light full on the top of the bell rope. You understand?
Yes, perfectly.
Good. Now we must wait. Perhaps for some time. But don't go to sleep, Watson. Don't go to sleep. Your very life may depend on it. Watson.
Yes.
smoking, are you? No, Holmes. I smell tobacco smoke.
Must be drifting through the ventilator.
Exactly. Dr. Roylott is up.
Look. There's a tiny shot of light showing up in the ventilator.
Shh.
Listen. There's the music.
Yes. Heralding the messenger of death. Have your lantern ready, Watson.
Now, Watson, now! Great heavens, it's a snake slithering down the bell rope. You can't get it without stick Holmes out of the way. Let me get a shot at it.
I'm trying to drive it back the way it came. Get out.
There it goes, back through the ventilator. Oh, what a fiendish plan. Great Scott, what's that?
I think the devil has turned on its master. Come on, Watson, into Dr. Roylott's room. Dr. Roylott! Dr. Roylott! Doctor!
Good Lord, Holmes. Look at him sprawled on the bed. Look at his eyes.
Yes. And see what is coiled around his forehead.
It's the snake.
Yes, the band. The speckled band.
He's dead, Holmes.
Yes, he's been bitten by the deadliest snake in the world, the Indian swamp adder. Its deadly fangs produce death within 10 seconds. Well, Watson, violence does in truth recoil upon the violent, and the schemer falls into the pit which he digs for another.
What should we do now, Holmes?
We must remove the macabre headgear from the dead doctor and return the snake to its den. And I suggest that we tell Miss Stoner that there's no more danger under this roof. After that, we can turn the matter over to the local police. Our work is done.
Holmes, Dr. Watson, I can't tell you how grateful I am that you brought me back into Baker Street.
Stoner, it would have been inhuman to leave you in that house of horror and death. We have a spare bedroom, and Mrs. Hudson is a motherly and understanding woman, and I can assure you that Dr. Watson and I will be delighted to have you stay with us here until you've decided on your future plans.
Yes, of course we will, my dear. As a matter of fact, it'd be rather refreshing to have a touch of youth about the place.
You're both so kind. Mr. Holmes, I think it's wonderful how you foiled my stepfather's devilish plans.
Yes, wasn't it a remarkable example of logical deduction?
No, it wasn't, old fellow. At first, your mention of the gypsies, Miss Stoner, and the use of the word band put me on an entirely wrong scent. However, when we examined the fatal room, I drew the obvious conclusions.
You mean the dummy bell rope, the ventilator, and the immovable bed?
Yes, old fellow. It instantly gave rise to the suspicion that the rope was there as a bridge for something coming through the ventilator and traveling to the bed. I once thought of a snake. When I saw the saucer of milk on top of the safe, my suspicions crystallized into certainties.
Oh, it was a fiendish plot.
Yes, an extremely clever one, too.
Exactly.
My stepfather must have trained the snake to return to him when he played the music.
Yes, he put it through the ventilator with the certainty that it would crawl down the rope and land on the bed. It might or might not bite the occupant. Perhaps she might escape every night for a week, but sooner or later she must fall a victim.
Thank heaven I came to you, Mr. Holmes.
Amen to that, Miss Stoner.
Holmes, if you hadn't lashed at the snake with your stick, I bet it wouldn't have turned back on its master.
True, old chap. In that way, I am no doubt indirectly responsible for Dr. Grimsby Roylott's death. But I can't say it's a fact that's likely to weigh too heavily on my conscience.
Doctor, that was quite a fascinating story. You know something? I'm not exactly a coward, but no kidding, my toes really curl when I get mixed up with snakes.
Oh, you're not alone in that respect, Mr. Bartell. I must admit that I like to have a revolver and at least 20 feet between me and any snake that wants to cross my path.
Well, if you want a revolver in 20 feet, I'll take a cannon in 20 miles.
It's fortunate that you're a wine expert, Mr. Bartell, not a detective. I'm afraid you wouldn't, shall we say, find detecting to your liking?
We certainly shall say it. And incidentally, I'm not a wine expert, Doctor. All I know about wine is that it either tastes good or it doesn't. And I also know that Petri wine always tastes good. The Petri family sees to that. The name Petri on the label is the personal assurance of the Petri family that every drop of wine in that bottle is good wine. And they know how to make it good because they've been making fine wine for generations. Handing down from father to son, every secret, every skill of the winemaker's art. Yes, the Petri family took time to bring you good wine. That's why, no matter what type of wine you wish, you can't go wrong with a Petri wine. Well, Dr. Watson, what new Sherlock Holmes story are you planning to tell us next week?
Now, let me see. Now, next week, Mr. Bartell, I think I'll tell you an adventure that took place at a gambling casino in the south of France. It's a strange story of sudden tragedy and death. I call it The Adventure of the 00.
Sounds swell. We'll all be listening.
Yeah, now, Mr. Bartell, before I go, I want to say that every one of our friends bought war bonds to help our boys win the war. And now let's all buy victory bonds to help bring our boys back home again. Yes, and let's buy victory bonds to make sure that the men who were wounded will get the finest possible care. Those same victory bonds will help make the GI Bill of Rights a success, too. And they'll help provide for the families of those men who gave everything, including their lives. The men of our armed forces finished their job. Now let's finish ours. Buy victory bonds.
Tonight's Sherlock Holmes adventure is written by Dennis Green and Anthony Boucher and is an adaptation of the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle story, The Adventure of the Speckled Band. Music is by Dean Fossler. Mr. Rathbone appears through the courtesy of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, and Mr. Bruce through the courtesy of Universal Pictures, where they are now starring in the Sherlock Holmes series. The Petri Wine Company of San Francisco, California, invites you to tune in again next week, same time, same station. This is Harry Bartell saying good night for the Petri family. Sherlock Holmes comes to you from our Hollywood studios. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System. This episode from the life of Sherlock Holmes will be transmitted to our men and women overseas by shortwave and through the worldwide facilities of the Armed Forces Radio Service. Petri Wine brings you Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce in the new adventures of Sherlock Holmes. The Petri family, the family that took time to bring you good wine, invites you to spend the next half hour listening to Dr. Watson tell us another exciting adventure he shared with his old friend, that master detective, Sherlock Holmes. And say, let me tell you something I found out just the other day. Steaks are really back again. Good, thick, juicy porterhouse steaks. That's for me. A thick, tender steak on the rare side, together with a glass of Petri California Burgundy. You know, Petri Burgundy is a perfect mealtime wine. And with meat or any meat dish, it's the very last word in good eating. Honestly, when you taste the wonderful flavor of that rich red Petri Burgundy, you're tasting one swell example of the art of winemaking. It's full-flavored and just about the most delicious wine that ever poured from a bottle. Try it the next time you have steak or chops, or the next time you have hamburger or pot roast. Believe me, Petri Burgundy is the best friend a good meal ever had. And now let's look in on our good friend and host, Dr. Watson.
Come in. Ah, there you are, Mr. Bartell.
Evening, Doctor.
Just in time to join me in a cup of coffee. Draw up your chair, young fellow, my lad.
Thank you.
Ah, that's it.
Well, Doctor, you told us last week that tonight's new Sherlock Holmes adventure takes us to the south of France.
That's right, Mr. Bartell. The south of France in the year 1900. A beautiful playground bordered by the bluest of blue seas and populated with an extraordinary cross-section of cosmopolitan Europe. Rich man, poor man, beggar man, thief. All of them attracted by that Riviera paradise. All of them drawn by the magical spell of a small white ball spinning round the rim of a roulette wheel.
Now, don't tell me that you and the great Sherlock Holmes were there on a gambling spree.
We were not, Mr. Bartell. At the time my story begins, we just concluded an extremely delicate mission. A mission, I may say, that concerned the safety and good name of a very prominent member of the royal family.
Say, Doctor, you don't mean...
One story at a time, Mr. Bartell. In any event, my boy, I'm afraid that's a case about which my lips are sealed for all time. But to return to tonight's adventure, one June evening, I persuaded Holmes to accompany me to the gambling casino at Frejus, not far from Cannes, where we were staying. It wasn't quite as fashionable as the casino at Monte Carlo, but as I intended to do a little modest gambling myself, it seemed an establishment more suited to my means. As we stood there at the green baize-covered tables, the chatter of voices and the melodic chanting of the croupiers as they called the results of each spin of the wheel formed a background to a quiet conversation that Holmes and I were having.
Lost again, Watson?
Oh, confound it. That number 10 must come up soon.
Oh, why not cut your losses, old fellow, and come for a stroll with me on the waterfront?
Well, just a big wait. A couple more bets, Holmes. I have a feeling that 10 is bound to come up in a minute.
Watson, I believe the blood of a gambler courses through your veins.
Oh, there's no harm in taking a little flutter once in a while. Why don't you risk a few francs, Holmes?
No, thanks you, my dear chap. The law of averages convinces me that my money is safer in my pocket. In any case, I'm a little dubious as to the integrity of this particular casino.
Well, what makes you say that?
Well, you will observe that this roulette wheel has a double zero. Most continental wheels have only a single one. It would indicate that this house is extremely concerned with its percentage.
Mesdames et messieurs, faites vos jeux. Oh, just two more turns of the wheel, Holmes, and I'll take that walk with you.
Oh, you müssen sich hier spielen. Why do you not play from the other side of the table? Why must you always stand next to me?
Hello. What's the trouble up there?
I've placed my bet, so let's go and see.
I ask you, sir, why do you play here beside me?
I'm afraid I don't see any reason why I can't play wherever I
Swish, you've broken my luck. Ever since you come to the table, I've done nothing but lose. Please to move away.
Well, move away yourself if you don't like my company.
Heinrich, why do you not stop now? You've already lost more than we can afford.
One more throw, Elsa. I can win it all back if only this young man will move away.
Why should my husband move? He's had a bad run of luck, too.
Rien ne va plus. Neuf. Rouge, impériment.
Ah, you've lost again, Watson.
Heinrich, you must stop now.
I must stop, Elsa, because I've lost everything. I hope you're satisfied, Mr. American. You've broken my luck and ruined me. I hope that you and your turn will be ruined too.
Heinrich, wait for me.
I never heard such rubbish in my life. Were you listening to him, sir?
I heard his last few remarks, Mr.
Gilbert. Roger Gilbert. And this is my wife, Helen.
How do you do? My name is Holmes, and this is my friend, Dr. Watson.
How do you do?
How do you do? Didn't you think his remarks were a little out of place, Doctor?
Yes, I certainly did, Mrs. Gilbert. I don't see how he can possibly blame your husband for his run of bad luck.
I didn't like the look on his face as he left the table, though. Have you any idea who he is?
His name is Schneemann. He's staying at the same hotel as we are. I've never spoken to him, but I've heard him being paged there.
Well, you shouldn't gamble unless he can afford to lose.
Well, I'm losing, darling, and I can't afford it.
Oh, but I can let you have more money. You know that.
Oh, no, Helen, I may have married an heiress, but I'm not going to use her fortune to gamble with.
Oh.
I'll lose my own money, and then I'll quit.
Mesdames et messieurs, faites vos jeux.
Your last bet, Watson?
Yes, Holmes. This time I know that number 10 is going to come up. It's got to. Numéro 10. One, 10 at last.
I've lost again, darn it. Helen, this is my bad night.
Well, why don't you stop now, dear?
Holmes, I've made 350 francs.
On this throw of the wheel, old fellow, but as you've lost some 500 francs doing it, I can't say that your profits stagger me.
Oh, Mr. Holmes, I can see that you're no gambler.
I'm afraid not, Mrs.
I
Gilbert.
wouldn't say that, Holmes. You may not like roulette. You've taken a good many chances in your life with long odds against you, too.
Well, nevertheless, old chap, in the sense Mrs. Gilbert means it, I'm not a gambler.
Say, what's the commotion over there?
Oh, that German woman with a crowd forming around her.
Yes, the wife of that man that said I ruined him.
Attention, est-ce qu'il y a un docteur dans la salle?
There must be trouble. He's asking for a doctor.
Doctor, come along, then.
Will you excuse me, please? Thank you. Excuse me, madame. Mon ami est docteur.
Monsieur, cette dame a besoin d'un docteur.
What happened, madame?
It is my husband.
Deal?
I just found him lying out in the garden. Please come with me at once, gentlemen.
Of course we will, madam.
What seems to be the matter with him?
Herr Doctor, I think he is dead. He's lying by that tree, Doctor. Please see if you can help him.
Somebody else seems to be on the scene before us. Who are you, sir?
I am Monsieur Chevray, director of the casino. Do any of you know this poor man?
I am his wife. Is he dead?
I am afraid so, madame.
Let me look at him. I'm a doctor.
Was your husband gambling in the casino tonight, madame?
Yeah, he was. Poor Heinrich. He lose everything that we have.
I'm afraid he's dead, madam. Shot through the heart.
Oh, du lieber Gott.
Suicide, Watson?
Yeah, looks like it.
Yes. Powder burns on the shirt front, revolver clutched in the right hand, fingers in a natural position. The angle of the wound settles it. Obviously self-inflicted.
I missed you as you slipped out of the casino. What's wrong with him?
I'm afraid he's dead, Mr. Gilbert.
Yes, he committed suicide. I hope, young man, that you are satisfied. All night you brought him bad luck. He asked you to move away from him to change his luck, but no, you could not do it.
Oh, Frau Schneemann, I'm terribly sorry, but I really don't see how you can blame me.
I do blame you. And I also blame you, Monsieur Chevry.
Me? But what have I done, madame?
Why do you let a man lose all his money at your tables? Is life so cheap to you, and money so important, that you cannot close the tables to someone before he's ruined?
Madame, I am all sympathy for you in your tragic loss. But the casino cannot be held responsible. If your husband could not afford to gamble, then he should not come here. How are we to know the financial limitations of our customers?
You said that your husband lost everything you had tonight, madam.
Yeah, everything.
Then how do you account for this sheaf of banknotes in his breast pocket?
Good Lord, must be several thousand francs, sir.
Then he wasn't ruined.
And his suicide, therefore, cannot be blamed on his losses at my casino, madame.
How do you account for this money, Frau Schneemann?
Well, I do not understand. Heinrich kept nothing from me. I know that he had not so much money on him when he started tonight. Well, why do you all look at me like that? Is it that you think? You think...
Quick, Watson, she's fainted.
I've got her. We must get her to her room.
You can take her to my suite in the casino.
No, let's take her to the hotel. My wife will look after her. Poor woman, she's had a dreadful shock. She can probably do with another woman's company.
That's very considerate of you, Mr. Gilbert. Where are you staying?
At the Hotel Crillon. It's quite near here.
I'll get a cab, and while I'm doing that, Watson, see if you can revive her, will you?
Yes,
then we'll take her to the Hotel Crillon. Very kind of you, Mrs. Gilbert, to let us bring the poor lady into your suite.
Well, it's the least I can do, in spite of what she said about Roger bringing her husband bad luck.
I'm sure she'll need your help when she wakes up, Helen.
Yes, I think you'll find that she'll sleep for some hours. I gave her a strong sedative.
Well, we were just about to have a drink, gentlemen. Do you care to join us?
Oh, thank you, sir.
Well, that'd be very nice, Mr. Gilbert.
Roger was just telling me that quite a large sum of money was found on Herr Schneemann's body, Mr. Holmes.
Yes, Mrs. Gilbert. Several thousand francs.
It's very puzzling, Holmes. Why should a man commit suicide with so much money on him?
I think the answer is obvious. He didn't.
What on earth do you mean?
Well, the money was placed there after he had shot himself. The banknotes were in his breast pocket, if you remember. Hardly the usual place to carry money. Though it is the easiest pocket for someone to insert it without disturbing the body.
But why on earth should someone place money on him after his suicide?
To prevent the casino from getting a bad name. I've heard of it being done on several similar occasions. Gives the impression that the unfortunate victim had other motives than gambling losses to account for his suicide.
Great Scott, you mean that one of the casino employees found the body lying there and slipped the money in his breast pocket before we arrived on the scene?
As you know, my dear Watson, I'm not a gambling man, but I'll lay you 100 to 1. That is what happened.
Well, that's a new one. Well, here are your drinks, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Say, Helen, Mr. Holmes has given me a brainwave.
Another one? What is it this time, Roger?
Now, I've been losing very heavily tonight.
Roger, I've told you, if you need money, I'll be only...
But I don't. I've got a scheme for making some. Oh. I'm going to gamble again tonight after dinner. If I lose, here's what I'll do. I'll stain my shirt front with red ink, walk out in the grounds, fire a shot, and lie down as though I'm dead. I'll wait for someone to come along and stuff my pockets full of banknotes.
Not a bad idea, Mr. Gilbert.
I think it's a darn good one. What do you say, Mr. Holmes?
It's a whimsical one at any rate. Who knows? You might even be successful.
Roger, you're not really going to do it, are you?
Sure. Perhaps I'll get some of my losses back that way. Well, let's drink to it, gentlemen. At least I may have hit upon an idea of making money.
My dear Watson, you'll have to work hard at your practice when you get back to England. Your infallible system appears to be extremely fallible.
And yet the fellow who told me about it said it couldn't miss. It's just a matter of doubling the stakes each time you lose, and then...
Oh, my dear fellow, I've been studying your system, but I can tell you a really infallible way of making money at roulette.
You can? What is it?
Well, own the gambling house and operate the tables yourself. The odds would be all in your favor.
Oh, what a brilliant suggestion. Own the gambling house and operate the
Not gambling for tonight, Watson? It's nearly 11 o'clock.
Yeah, I think so. Let's take a stroll round the other table, shall we?
By the way, old fellow, the young American, Mr. Gilbert, was losing heavily again tonight.
He was? I wonder if he'll try that trick that he threatened. The one with the red ink and the shot in the night.
I shouldn't be at all surprised. As a matter of interest, I saw him leave the tables about half an hour ago.
Here comes his wife, on the arm of Monsieur Chevrier, the director of the casino.
Good evening, Mrs. Gilbert. Monsieur?
Bonsoir, monsieur.
Hello, Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson. Monsieur Chevrier is giving me a personally conducted tour of the casino. It's quite fascinating.
And it is quite fascinating for me to have so beautiful a woman on my arm, mademoiselle. I know that I am the envy of all the men in the room.
Oh, stop flattering me so much. I'm not used to it.
Mrs. Gilbert, how is Frau Schneemann?
She seems much better. She wakened an hour ago and insisted on going back to her own room. I wanted her to spend the night with us in our suite, but she wouldn't hear of it.
I think I should drop in and see her before I go to bed.
Oh, you have finished the gambling for tonight, perhaps, Doctor?
No, perhaps about it, Monsieur Chevrier. I've had a bad run at the tables.
Oh, I am so sorry.
Has anyone seen Roger?
He left the tables about half an hour ago, Mrs. Gilbert.
After doing as I did and losing quite heavily.
So he lost again, did he? I wonder if he'll try that new system he was talking about.
We were just discussing that possibility ourselves, Mrs. Gilbert.
Mrs. Gilbert! Mrs. Gilbert!
Frau Schneemann, you shouldn't have left your hotel, you know.
It is too late to worry for me, Herr Doctor. It is for Mrs. Gilbert now that you should worry.
What do you mean, madame?
Well, I went back just now to where poor Heinrich died. And there, lying in the grass, I saw another body. I was too shocked to go too close. But I am quite sure that I recognize your husband, Mrs. Gilbert.
Oh, Dr. Watson, she's ruined Roger's trick.
And he'll have taken fright and bolted by the time we get there.
Possibly. Let's go at once and find out, shall we?
He hasn't gone. He's still lying there.
It's a most convincing spectacle. That red ink really does look like blood.
Yes. And blood sometimes looks like red ink. Mr. Gilbert.
Roger, get up. The joke's spoiled. Roger! Get up!
I'm afraid that's impossible, Mrs. Gilbert. He's dead.
Dr. Watson's story will be continued in just a second, which is all the time I need to tell you that the easiest way I know to transform a simple meal into a feast is to serve that meal together with Petri California Sauterne. Petri Sauterne is a delicate white wine that's the perfect companion for chicken or turkey. Turkey. Ah, yes. Turkey and Petri Sauterne. That's the heart of any Thanksgiving dinner. Look, why not make this Thanksgiving dinner the best one you ever had? Give it the air of a banquet. Serve it with Petri Sauterne. And when you buy that Sauterne or any wine for your Thanksgiving dinner, whatever you do, look for the letters P-E-T-R-I, because a Petri wine is always a good wine. Well, Doctor, so the young American's joke turned out to be another tragedy.
Yes, Mr. Bartell. The poor fellow was lying there dead with a bullet wound in the heart and a great splash of blood staining the whiteness of his shirt front.
What happened next?
Monsieur Chevre, director of the casino, took the distraught widow away from the scene, while Holmes and I examined the body closely. Within a few minutes, we were joined by Inspector Ganivet of the French police. As we stood there in the moonlight, the sounds of music could be heard from the casino. It was hard to believe that two men had died in that lovely garden since the moon had risen.
Monsieur Holmes, you and Dr. Watson have concluded your examination?
Yes, Inspector Ganivet.
Will you favor me with your observations? You say that you are certain that this is not another suicide?
I'm sure of it, Inspector. Look at the wound. The bullet entered the body at a direct right angle, whereas a self-inflicted shot is always fired obliquely.
Yes, that is so. Then you suggest that this man was shot from above as he lay on the ground pretending to be dead?
I'm convinced of it.
Why, Monsieur Holmes?
Well, for two reasons. Though it's impossible to be sure without a laboratory test, I'm certain that beneath those blood stains are stains of red ink. Look for yourself, Inspector.
Yes, indeed, it does look like it. What is your other reason for being certain that this man was shot as he lay here pretending dead?
Show him the banknotes, Watson.
Here you are, Inspector. We found them stuffed in his breast pocket.
So, banknotes with a bullet hole through the middle of them. Very illuminating. Tell me, gentlemen, how many people knew of this little plot you have told me about, this plan of the dead man's to pretend to be shot?
Just 3 people, Inspector, Dr. Watson, myself, and Mrs. Gilbert.
Alors, then the answer is obvious. You and your friend are innocent. It must be the wife who killed him. No one else knew of the plot.
I'm not so sure of that. Frau Schneemann, the dead German's widow, was in the next room when Gilbert told us about his plan. She might have heard, though I could swear that she was asleep. I gave her a very strong sleeping draught.
From what you have told me of her husband's suicide, she might easily have had a motive for murdering this man.
Come, gentlemen. Surely it's obvious who murdered Mr. Gilbert?
Who, Monsieur Holmes?
Well, it's certainly one of the 2 widows.
Since there seems to be some doubt in your minds, I suggest we return to the casino. I can promise you the answer to your question within a very few minutes. Well, Monsieur Chevre, now that we're all assembled in your office, I shall sit down quietly and let Inspector Ganivet conduct his examination.
No, Monsieur Holmes. No, you have handled the case so far. Please to continue it to the end.
Yes, Monsieur Holmes. I should appreciate it. On behalf of the casino.
Very well, gentlemen. It won't take me long. Frau Schneemann.
Ja, Herr Holmes.
What time did you leave your hotel tonight?
Well, I do not know what time it was.
Well, what made you leave it?
I could not sleep. I knew that they had taken poor Heinrich's body away, but I felt that I must walk back there. It was the last place I saw him alive.
How close did you come to Mr. Gilbert's body when you saw it lying there?
Oh, close enough to see who it was. Then I ran into the casino to tell his wife. I knew what had happened.
How did you know? You say you didn't come close to the body.
I could tell by every line of the body as it lay there. I could tell because I knew that poor Heinrich's death would not be avenged.
Thank you, Frau Schneemann. That will be all. You may go.
Monsieur Holmes, she has no alibi. Surely you should stop her.
Ganivet, if I'm to conduct this investigation, I must do it my own way.
Pardon, Monsieur Holmes. Please continue.
You may go, Frau Schneemann. Mrs. Gilbert?
Yes, Mr. Holmes.
Where were you prior to our meeting in the casino tonight, just before we discovered your husband's body?
After I left the hotel, I walked over here along the seafront.
Can anyone verify that statement?
I suppose not. I didn't meet anyone that I knew.
And what did you do when you arrived at the casino?
I played a little chemin de fer. A few moments later, Monsieur Chevre came over to the table and asked if he might escort me over the club. 10 minutes after that, we walked into you and Dr. Watson.
That is quite true, Monsieur Holmes. I can swear to it.
Thank you, Mrs. Gilbert. I'm sorry to distress you with these questions. You may go.
I'll wait outside, Mr. Holmes. I must know what happened.
Wait for me there, madame. I shall join you in a few minutes and escort you home.
Well, another suspect with a poor alibi, eh, Ganivet?
I must say, Monsieur Holmes, your methods puzzle me. It seems to me that both those women should be watched.
Yes, I agree with the Inspector, Holmes.
Please don't worry, Inspector. I've asked 2 of your plainclothes men to keep an eye on the ladies. And now, Monsieur Chevre, I'd like to ask you a few questions.
Ask me any questions you wish, Monsieur Holmes.
Thank you. You will agree that it is the custom of the casino to put money on the bodies of suicides after their death, to give the impression that gambling losses were not responsible for the tragedy.
Well, I do not think...
Oh, come now, Chevre. I know that is a fact as well as you do.
Exactly. Now, on those rather gruesome occasions, whose responsibility is it to secrete the money? Yours? Or do you entrust the matter to an underling?
I do it myself.
I see. Did you place the money on Herr Schneemann tonight?
Yes, monsieur, I did.
And did you also perform the same service on the body of Mr. Gilbert?
No. I knew nothing of that death until a German lady, Frau Schneemann, come running into the casino.
Excuse me interrupting, monsieur.
Of course, Inspector. What is it?
I think that you are wasting time. It is obvious that Madame Gilbert committed the crime. She knew of her husband's plot, she had no alibi, and she had the motive. For is not marriage itself the greatest of all motives for murder?
Oh, my dear Inspector. How very cynical.
Madame Gilbert did not kill her husband. I know it.
And what is your opinion, Watson?
Well, it's that German woman. She had no alibi either. And remember, she was half mad with grief.
Mr. Chevre, you say that you know Mrs. Gilbert is not guilty. How do you know?
I was with her myself at the time the murder was committed.
Oh, indeed. How very interesting. And what time was the murder committed?
Well, it was...
Our investigations have never established what time the murder was committed, Monsieur Chevre. I'm afraid you've walked into my trap. You've given yourself away.
Great Scott, Chevre, it was you.
Chevre, I've known you a good many years, and this is going to be a hard thing to do. I am going to arrest you.
Oh, no, you're not, Delivery.
Put down that revolver, sir.
Do not be frightened, Doctor. I am not going to shoot you.
Chevre, why did you murder Roger Gilbert tonight?
Surely you know that too, Monsieur Holmes. Because I am in love with his wife. She's young, beautiful, and rich. It did not occur to me until I saw the young fool lying there tonight pretending to be dead. In my profession, it is natural that I should carry a revolver. What was simpler? Mr. Gilbert gave me the perfect opportunity. I could not resist it.
Put down that revolver, Chevre.
Why are you all so frightened? Surely you know how I am going to use it this time.
I think so, monsieur. But it's a coward's way out.
What an unperceptive remark for such a perceptive man. No. No, all my life I have been a gambler. I gambled tonight for the highest stakes of all, and I lost. No, I'm not afraid to pay for my losses. Au revoir, monsieur.
Extraordinary case, Holmes. I never suspected Chevre.
And I, old chap, suspected him from the beginning.
Well, I wasn't the only one who was stupid anyway. Inspector Ganivet thought it was the wife.
True. Very puzzling conclusion for a detective inspector to arrive at.
Well, it seemed logical enough to me at the time.
No, my dear Watson. Cold logic should have told you otherwise. Roger Gilbert had been losing heavily and had planned this hoax. He obviously had no money on him. Therefore, the money was planted in his pocket by Chevre.
After he shot him?
No, my dear fellow. Before.
Before?
The bullet hole through the banknotes provided that. Now, had the money been put there innocently, Gilbert would have, come back to life as soon as the person placing it there had left. He would not have remained lying on the ground for a murderer to find him.
Then Chevre must have bent over him as he lay there, placed the money in his breast pocket, and then fired.
Precisely, Watson.
Well, Holmes, I must say you solved it very neatly. You've told Inspector Ganivet that you wanted no credit in the case.
Naturally, publicity would be unfavorable. If you remember, no one is supposed to know that we're in the south of France.
I'm certain that the inspector learned a few tips about detection tonight.
Possibly, old fellow. And I hope that you have learned a few things about gambling.
How do you mean, Holmes?
Well, you're backing the wrong color. A gambler is usually superstitious, and superstition... Well, I should have told you what color to follow tonight.
I still don't understand you, Holmes. I was playing number 10.
Exactly. Number 10 is black. You should have followed a red color tonight, old fellow. The color of red ink. Red ink. And blood.
Say, Doctor, that was a swell story. I didn't know you liked to play roulette.
Well,
I figured out a system for roulette. It's like yours. Every time you lose, you double your money and keep doubling until you win.
Oh, it's a great system, Mr. Bartell. There's only one thing wrong with it.
What's that?
You lose, you go broke before you win. Look, take my advice. Don't gamble. You can't beat the laws of chance.
But suppose I bet on a sure thing.
Like what, for instance?
Oh, like the fact that Petri wine is always good wine. It is, you know. Because the Petri family has been making wine for generations. They've been handing down from father to son, the art of turning luscious, sun-ripened grapes into delicious, fragrant wine. Ever since the Petri family started their business way back in the 1800s, they've been perfecting the art of winemaking. That's why Petri wine is always good wine. The Petri family took time to bring you good wine. So no matter what type wine you prefer, why not take a few seconds of your time to look for the letters P-E-T-R-I. They spell delicious wine, Petri wine. Well, Dr. Watson, what new Sherlock Holmes story are you going to tell us next week?
Next week, Mr. Bartell, I'm going to tell you of a strange adventure that Sherlock Holmes and I had when we were in Stratford-on-Avon many years ago. It concerns an actor, a mysterious boating accident, and several dead butterflies.
Sounds good, Doctor. I'll see you then.
Oh, fine, but now, don't forget next week we're going to broadcast our program from the Paramount Theatre in Hollywood for the Victory Loan Drive. So if any of our friends are going to be in Hollywood, we'd love to see them there. Just buy a Victory bond at any store or bank on Hollywood Boulevard, and in return, you will be given your ticket of admission. Better hurry up, though, before all the seats are gone. Let's really buy lots of those Victory bonds. Let's finish the job.
Tonight's Sherlock Holmes adventure is written by Dennis Green and Anthony Boucher and was suggested by an incident in the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle story, A Study in Scarlet. Music is by Dean Fosler. Mr. Rathbone appears through the courtesy of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, and Mr. Bruce through the courtesy of Universal Pictures, where they are now starring in the Sherlock Holmes series. The Petri Wine Company of San Francisco, California, invites you to tune in again next week, same time, same station. This is Harry Bartell saying goodnight for the Petri family. Sherlock Holmes comes to you from our Hollywood studio. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System. This episode from the life of Sherlock Holmes will be transmitted to our men and women overseas by shortwave and through the worldwide facilities of the Armed Forces Radio Service. Petri Wine brings you Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce in the new adventures of Sherlock Holmes. The Petri family, the family that took time to bring you good wine, invite you to spend the next half hour listening to Dr. Watson tell us another exciting adventure he shared with his old friend, the world-famous detective, Sherlock Holmes. As for me, I'd like to leave you with one thought. Namely, the best way to begin a good meal is to start it off with a glass of Petri California sherry. While you're waiting for dinner to be ready, just sit back, take it easy, and sip some of that wonderful Petri sherry. Now, there's a wine. Hold that Petri sherry to the light and look at that rich amber color. Smells good, too, doesn't it? And just wait for that first sip. What a flavor. No kidding, you'll find that Petri sherry can turn the usual before-dinner lull into a real event. Petri sherry is the best beginning a good meal ever had. Try it. And say, if you like your sherry dry, not sweet, just ask for Petri California Pale Dry Sherry. But no matter how you like it, you're sure to like it if the label says Petri. See for yourself. And now for the weekly visit with our good friend and host, Dr. Watson. Tonight, we find him on the stage of the Paramount Theater in Hollywood. Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening, Mr. Bartell. If you've bought a victory bond, you're welcome.
I have, Doctor. Now, what's the recipe for tonight's new Sherlock Holmes adventure?
Well, now, let me see. Take equal parts of beautiful English countryside and black villainy. Mix them, add a dash of romance, a sprinkling of danger, season well with the usual theatrical condiments, and you have the case of the accidental murderess.
Sounds like a tasty dish. How did the story begin, Doctor?
On a beautiful summer day in 1895, Holmes had just concluded his famous investigation of the sudden death of Cardinal Tosca, an inquiry which was carried out at the express desire of His Holiness the Pope. And in consequence, the great man felt that a couple of weeks' rest in the heart of Warwickshire would be a pleasant change after our rather strenuous adventures in Italy. And so, Mr. Bartell, we went to Stratford-on-Avon.
Oh, the home of Shakespeare, huh?
Quite right, my boy. As a matter of fact, that was the reason that decided us to go there. Holmes was a great lover of the drama, you know, and at the time my story begins, the Shakespearean festival was in full swing. For the first week, our life there was calm and peaceful. During the daytime, we visited the local places of interest, such as Anne Hathaway's cottage and Shakespeare's birthplace, and the evenings found us at the theater. It was on a Tuesday, I remember, during our second week's stay, that the trouble began. Holmes and I had gone for a walk through the nearby forest of Avon. He was in unusually good spirits that morning, and there was a distinct twinkle in his eye as he said,
Watson, for once I begin to wish that I were a man of wealth.
Oh, and what makes you say that, Holmes?
The beauty of this place, old fellow. I'm perfectly certain I'd be happy in retirement here. It's rather depressing to think that in a week or two the sordid necessity of making money will demand my return to Baker Street in a world of criminals.
No, I must say that in an environment like this, it is a little hard to think of crime. How does the old saying go? Where every prospect pleases, and only man is vile.
Yes, but Shakespeare puts it even better, old chap.
Oh, really? What's he say?
Well, surely you remember the speech in As You Like It. We saw the production 2 nights ago.
Oh, I don't remember the speech. How did it go?
In this setting, it's really remarkably apposite. Are not these woods more free from peril than the envious court? Here feel we but the penalty of Adam, the season's difference. Don't you remember? Sweet are the uses of adversity, which like the toad, ugly and venomous, wears yet a precious jewel in his head. And this our life exempt from public haunt finds tongues in trees, books in the running brooks, sermons in stones, and good in everything. I would not change it.
Upon my soul, you read that much better than the fellow on the stage the other night.
Don't tell me I adopted the wrong profession, Watson. Oh, dear me, wait a minute. Path seems to end here. Nothing but dense trees ahead of us.
There's another path over there. I think it leads down to the river.
Then let's follow it. The Avon is always...
Great Scott, that was a... Holmes! Holmes, you hurt?
Yes, I think I am. Bullet hit my shoulder. I think it's only grazed it.
Well, get off your coat quickly. Let's have a
No,
look.
it's only a scratch. First, let's find out where it was fired from. I heard the thud of a bullet in the tree behind me. Yes, here we are. Give me a penknife, old fellow, will you?
There you are.
Thanks.
Do you suppose that shot was deliberate?
Well, I can't imagine someone mistaking me for a rabbit, Watson. By the way, there was a curious echo to that shot. I don't know whether you noticed it. Here's the bullet. Now, let me see. I was standing there. A line from this bullet hole in the tree through the spot where I was standing would indicate that the shot was fired from that cluster of trees over there. Come on, Watson. Let's see what a search discloses.
Yes, I wish you'd let me look at that shoulder before you start galloping all over the countryside, Holmes. You're bleeding quite profusely.
Oh, plenty of time to look at it when we... Hello. Look over there.
A man and woman running towards us across the clearing.
Yes, and carrying guns.
Yes, it looks as if it was an accident after all.
Was anyone hurt?
Yes, sir. My friend was hit in the shoulder.
Oh, how dreadful. It's not a bad wound, is it?
Oh, it's only a scratch, madam, I hope.
But the blood on your coat.
Well, just How did this accident happen, sir?
Well, we were out rabbit shooting. I was teaching my wife to use a rifle.
I saw a rabbit scurry across the clearing. I raised the rifle and fired. It seemed to me, Geoffrey, that as I did so, you jolted my arm.
Yes, I'm afraid I did, Alice. I was going to fire too, but as I raised my rifle, I jolted your elbow and sent your shot wild. I can't tell you how sorry I am, sir. Here's my card. Of course, we'll take care of any expenses that may be entailed.
Well, the first thing to do is to find out how much damage has been done. You'd better take your coat off, old fellow.
I don't think I can.
Oh, he's badly hurt.
No, it's just that...
The man's fainted.
Oh, this is dreadful. I have a horse and trap down the road.
Excellent. Give me a hand with him, will you? I must get him to a hospital as fast as possible. Holmes, you feeling any better?
Has the nurse gone?
Yes. She's bringing the house surgeon.
And the man and his wife?
They're down in the hospital waiting room.
Oh.
I found out their name. It's Markham.
Then we're alone.
Yes, old fellow.
In that case, I can stop behaving as if I were at death's door.
Holmes, you mean that you shammed that collapse just now?
Yes, I did, Watson. But spare me a little pity, old chap. My shoulder's confoundedly painful, I assure you.
Well, I'm sure it is. But what made you pretend to faint?
I recognized this Mrs. Markham, and I think she recognized me. It's important she assume I'm out of action for a while.
Oh?
Mrs. Markham.
Why?
Well, Mrs. Markham is, in reality, the notorious Mrs. Dangerfield. You remember the Dangerfield case?
The Dangerfield? Great Scott, yes. She was tried for the murder of her husband by poisoning, wasn't she?
Yes, she was, old fellow. She was acquitted when the jury decided he was an habitual arsenic addict who happened to take an accidental overdose.
Well, didn't you have some connection with the case?
It was I who tracked down the sale of the arsenic she claimed to have bought for cosmetic purposes.
Well, if you ask me, that shot at you was no accident.
Oh, of course it wasn't. I'm certain that I was recognized. In any case, her record is a bad one. Prior to her husband's death, there was an episode in which her uncle was killed in a shooting accident on a grouse moor in Scotland. An uncle who left her a large fortune on his death.
And I suppose Mrs. Dangerfield was a member of the shooting party when the accident happened.
Yes, she was. She's something of a femme fatale, Watson. I must plan my actions very cautiously. I'm up against a dangerous opponent.
Well, you'll have to stay in the hospital until your wound's being examined and dressed.
That's true, old fellow. And while the local staff are taking care of that, I want you to shadow the Markhams.
Of course I will, Holmes.
Stick close to them, old fellow. Make them believe that I'm going to be kept here for some days. Find out as much as you can, and then report to me.
Right, I'll do my best. It's awfully kind of you, Mrs. Markham, to insist on having me back to your house for lunch.
My dear Dr. Watson, after injuring the famous Mr. Holmes, it's the least I could do.
Of course it is.
Geoffrey, dear, will you bring us some sherry? It's Ada's day off, you know.
Very well, Alice. Is anyone else coming to lunch?
Only Dennis Romney.
Oh, Lord, that fellow seems to live here. Well, I'll go and get the sherry.
Sit down, won't you, Dr. Watson?
Oh, thank you, madam. Thank you.
You say that you think Mr. Holmes will be in the hospital for some days?
I'm afraid so. The wound wasn't serious. He lost quite a bit of blood.
Oh, I feel perfectly dreadful about it.
Well, you mustn't blame yourself too much, madam. It was an accident.
Yes, but I might so easily have killed him.
Well, you haven't, and that's all that matters. Did you say that Dennis Romney was coming to lunch? Is that the actor fellow from the Memorial Theatre?
Yes. Have you seen him on the stage?
Yes, several times. Holmes and I have been going to the festival regularly since we came down here.
A fine actor, isn't he? A shame they give him such poor parts.
Well, it was really good.
Imagine them letting that frightful Basil Grant play Hamlet last night, while Dennis only played Laertes. Dennis is 3 times a better actor.
I suppose he is.
He's coaching me in acting.
Oh, coaching you? Really?
Yes, he thinks that I may be able to get small parts here next season. I've always had a great urge to go on the stage, but no one's ever encouraged me before. Oh, here's Geoffrey.
This sherry's rather special, Doctor. Jerez de la Frontera. Only a few bottles left.
Oh, that's very nice of you, sir.
Oh, that must be Dennis. I'll go let him in.
We might as well have a drink. You'll find it'll help making this actor fella more tolerable.
I take it, Mr. Markham, that you're not an admirer of Mr. Dennis Romney's.
Can't bear him. He's always quoting Shakespeare and behaving generally as if he were another Irving. He's got Alice completely fooled. Here's a glass, Doctor.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Dennis, I want to introduce you to Dr. Watson.
How do you do, Mr. Romney?
How do you do, sir? Hello, Geoffrey.
Hello. Want a glass of sherry?
Thanks. That'd be very nice. Are you a disciple of the theater, Dr. Watson?
Well, hardly a disciple, sir, but I've been attending the festival during the last week. I enjoyed your performances immensely, if I may say so.
Oh, you may say so, Doctor. Here's your sherry, Dennis.
Oh, don't be crotchety, Geoffrey. And please remember that Dennis is our guest.
Oh, it's all right, Alice. I know that Geoffrey's bark is a good deal worse than his bite.
And what play are you appearing in tonight, Mr. Romney?
King Lear. I shall once again portray the thankless role of the King of France. While that incredibly bad actor, Basil Grant, tears a multitude of passions to tatters in his rendition of Lear. Oh, horrible, horrible, most horrible.
I thought his Hamlet was atrocious last night, Dennis.
Wasn't it? When he came to his final line, the rest is silence, was as much as I could do to prevent cheering.
I felt rather the same way when you were killed in the duel, Dennis.
Oh, Geoffrey, you're being intolerably rude. Why don't you take Dr. Watson upstairs and show him your butterfly collection? Then at least you'll know what you're talking about.
Are you interested in butterflies, Doctor? I have quite a rare collection.
Oh, really? I'd like to see them very much.
Come on, then. I think we just got time before lunch.
Try and bring yourself down with a few better manners, Geoffrey, dear.
I'm really quite an easygoing man, Doctor, but the arrogance of that fellow Romney infuriates me.
I must say he does seem to have rather a good opinion of himself.
Don't put too much weight on that balcony rail. It's absolutely full of wormholes. Part of the attraction of an old house, my wife tells me. But I regard it as confoundedly dangerous. Yeah, and this is my little museum. In these cases, I think you'll find some of the finest specimens of Lepidoptera you've ever seen. It's my hobby, and I may say that, with the exception of the Natural History Museum, I doubt if you'll find a finer collection.
It must have taken you years to collect them.
It has. Many years, many disappointments, and a great deal of patience. Look at this fella. He's my prize specimen, a North American monarch.
North American monarch? Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, isn't he? And this is an admiral.
Yes, of course, I know him.
Rare. And this is a perfect bee-hawk moth.
Bee-hawk moth?
Here's an emperor. Ever see more exquisite markings?
Well, never. Tell me, Mr. Markham, when you captured a butterfly, how'd you kill it without marking it in any way?
With poison.
Oh? What poison?
Cyanide.
Not arsenic?
You heard me say cyanide, Doctor.
The only reason I mention it is that a friend of mine collected butterflies once, and I'm certain that he always used arsenic to kill them.
Why'd you keep talking of arsenic? You're trying to hint at something.
No, my dear fellow. I was just curious, that's all.
Yes. Trifle too curious, perhaps. There's the luncheon gong. Let's go downstairs again.
I see, old man. I didn't mean to offend you.
Oh, of course you didn't. But my nerves are a little on edge today. Must be that accident to your friend that's upset him. I really must get that balcony rail mended. Shh. Shh.
What is it, sir?
My wife and young Romney. They're going into lunch. Listen.
But, darling, why won't he understand?
How can you expect him to, Dennis? Geoffrey has no imagination. He's never understood me.
Well, Doctor, they say that listeners never hear good of themselves. You know, sometimes I wonder if my wife wouldn't like me out of the way. Let's go down to lunch, shall we?
So, Holmes, that's the story up to now.
A very interesting one, too, Watson. So you think that Mrs. Markham is planning to kill our husband, eh?
Oh, it's obvious. She's in love with the actor fellow, Dennis Romney. Her husband's in the way, and if she doesn't want to use poison this time, there's a perfect setting for murder in that crumbling balustrade on the landing.
Mm-hmm.
One push when he wasn't looking, and it'd be the end of him. And no one could prove that she did it.
A charming household. And Mr. Markham became very evasive, you say, when you mentioned arsenic.
Yes. I said it deliberately, of course, to see how he'd react. If you ask me, he knows that his wife has arsenic in the house. And he was trying to protect her.
You've exerted your charm sufficiently to arrange to see them again, I trust.
Well, yes, as a matter of fact, I have. They're taking a picnic tea and going boating on the Avon this afternoon. They asked me to join them. Of course, I agreed. I just rushed back here to the hospital to report to you first.
You've done splendidly, Watson, splendidly.
Oh, thanks so much, man. But I've been so busy telling you what I've found out that I haven't asked you about you. How are you feeling?
Oh, I'm fine, old fellow, fine.
What did the house surgeon discover?
A very interesting fact. Look in the drawer beside my bed, will you?
Great Scott, it's a bullet.
A bullet that the house surgeon removed from my shoulder.
But we found a bullet in the tree also.
Precisely. Therefore, 2 bullets were fired.
But, good Lord, that means...
It means, old chap, that we have a dangerous task ahead of us. Not to solve a murder, but to prevent one.
We'll hear the rest of Dr. Watson's unusual story in just a moment. Meanwhile, I'd like to remind you that good cooking becomes wonderful cooking if you serve your good food with a Petri wine. If you like a red wine, say with meat or any meat dish, try Petri California Burgundy. If white wine's your favorite, then you'll love Petri California Sauterne. It's wonderful. But Burgundy or Sauterne, whichever you prefer, it's just bound to be good if you see the letters Petri on the bottle. Because Petri wine is always good wine. And now, Dr. Watson, what happened next? We left you at Sherlock Holmes' bedside in the hospital. Did the picnic with Mr. and Mrs. Markham prove an exciting one?
No, it was rather unpleasant, as a matter of fact. The 3 of them kept squabbling all the time, and just as we were coming home, something unforeseen occurred. Mr. Markham fell into the river.
Well, pardon the old question, Doctor, but did he fall or was he pushed?
It was hard for me to say. I had my back to him when he fell. Of course, we fished him out and rattled him back home in a trap as fast as we could. He changed his clothes at once, and as we sat round the fire a little later, I could see that he'd caught a chill. In fact, I recommended that he go to bed and stay there. Mrs. Markham agreed with me.
Geoffrey, dear, I do wish you'd follow Dr. Watson's advice and go to bed.
For the 5th time, Alice, I will not go to bed. I'm perfectly all right. No, it's no thanks to you and Dennis.
What do you mean by that remark, Geoffrey?
You know perfectly well what I mean. It wasn't an accident that I fell in the river just now. One of you 2 pushed me when I was struggling with the punt pole in the long reeds.
Geoffrey, you're talking rubbish.
Am I? You were in the boat, Dr. Watson. Didn't you see what happened?
No, I didn't, sir. My back was turned to you when you fell in.
Oh, well, then we'll call it an accident. An accident that happened by a curious coincidence, just where the river is deepest and the reeds thickest.
Geoffrey, I don't like your tone. You can accuse me of anything you like, but when you start suggesting that Alice...
If you don't like the way I talk to my wife, I suggest that you don't come to my house. I'm going to get a scarf. I'm chilly.
Dr. Watson, I must apologize for my husband's behavior. I don't know what's come over him.
Oh, that's quite all right, Mr. Markham. I quite understand.
Well, I wish I did. I don't mind him yelling at me, but he's being so abominably rude to you, Alice. The last couple of weeks, it's been getting worse than ever.
I know. Ever since we had that argument about the insurance policies, he's been unbearable.
Insurance?
Yes, Doctor. We took out quite large policies on each other's lives recently.
You didn't tell me that, Alice.
Well, it was his idea. And yet when the insurance man came here, you'd have thought I was forcing him into taking out the policy.
Insurance? Great Scott,
You what, Doctor?
Nothing, Mr. Markham. No, nothing at all.
Sounds as if you don't approve of insurance, sir.
Oh, it's not that, Romney. It's just that I...
Who can that be? I wasn't expecting anyone. Answer the door, Dennis, will you?
Yes, of course. Sounds as if Geoffrey has already done so.
Oh, Alice, we have a visitor.
Holmes, you shouldn't be up.
Good evening, Mrs. Markham. Hello, Watson.
Well, I'm delighted to see you, Mr. Holmes. Though I understood from your friend that you'd be in the hospital for several days.
The constitution of an ox and the obstinacy of a mule, two characteristics of mine, have combined in making possible an early departure from the hospital. How do you do, Mr. Romney? I think I've seen you at the theatre. My name is Sherlock Holmes.
How do you do, sir?
You'll stay to supper, I hope.
If it's not inconvenient, Mrs. Markham.
Of course it isn't. I'll go in and arrange for it.
Upon my soul, Holmes, I'm glad to see you.
And are you, old fellow? Let's take a stroll on the terrace, shall we? It's rather warm inside this evening.
You can go out through the French windows.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Markham.
Holmes, are you quite sure that you're well enough to go walking about?
Of course I am. You must tell me, Watson, what the latest developments are. In the meantime, I myself have not been idle. Yes, Watson, I think our stage is set, and I have a feeling that I may contribute to a rather dramatic last act curtain.
A delightful meal, Mrs. Markham.
Well, thank you, Doctor. Mr. Holmes, you're not eating very much.
My appetite is a trifle jaded. The mental fencing that we have indulged in during the meal has been somewhat disturbing.
I don't understand you.
Oh, come now, madam. I know that you were once Mrs. Dangerfield, and you know that I know it. Why keep up the pretense any longer?
Very well, Mr. Holmes. But we needn't converse in lowered voices. I'm sure that you've told Dr. Watson whatever there is to know, and perhaps more.
I admire your courage, madam.
Geoffrey, Dennis.
Yes, Ellen.
I want you to listen to this. Mr. Sherlock Holmes knows that I was once Mrs. Dangerfield. He's apparently under the impression that this is a dark secret of mine. Mr. Holmes, Geoffrey knew and loved me before I ever married Mr. Dangerfield.
Of course I did, Holmes.
He stood by me during the horrible trial after my first husband's death. And I told Dennis about the whole miserable business months ago. So I really don't see that you've uncovered any great secret.
Not yet, Mrs. Markham, but I have a feeling that it's only a matter of moments.
So you haven't got any secrets from Dennis either, eh?
There's no need to shout, Geoffrey.
And there's no need for Dennis to be in my house. Get out, Romney, and stay out. This business between you and Alice has gone far enough.
I'll go when Alice tells me to.
Well, if you won't go, then I'm not going to sit here. I'm going upstairs.
You're shaking like a leaf, sir. You've got a fever. Don't you think you'd better go to bed?
Mind your own business and leave me alone.
Mrs. Markham, I really think you should persuade your husband to go upstairs and lie down.
Don't worry, Mr. Holmes. I know how to handle him. I'll take him up. Put an arm around my shoulder, Geoffrey. Come along.
We should follow them, Holmes. They have to pass that crumbling banister on the landing. With him in that state, she might try to...
What are you suggesting, Doctor? Come and watch, both of you. We can observe them both from the foot of the stairs here.
They're on the landing. She's on the outside. Look. Markham stumbled against her. He's pushed her against the railings. Look out!
Geoffrey, be careful!
Come on, up the stairs.
Alice, are you all right?
Yes, but Geoffrey tried to push me through the railing.
That's a lie.
No, it isn't, sir. The three of us were watching you from below.
But the railing held. I don't understand.
I can explain that, Watson. This afternoon, while you were all at your picnic, I came here with a local carpenter. You had informed me, old fellow, that it was the maid's day off, and I took the liberty of reinforcing that decaying woodwork.
What the blazes do you think you've been up to, Holmes?
Preventing murder, sir, and finding the true solution to the Dangerfield case.
What do you mean, Mr. Holmes? The true solution?
Surely it's obvious to you, Mrs. Markham. You have told us that your present husband loved you before you married Mr. Dangerfield. It was he who accidentally killed your uncle so that you might inherit a fortune. It was he who accidentally gave your first husband an overdose of arsenic. Arsenic that he obtained for the purpose of destroying butterflies.
Yes, and it was he who tried to send you to your death by pushing you through those railings. And all the time, Mrs. Markham, I thought that you were the potential murderer.
You fellows have got hold of the wrong end of the stick. All I've been trying to do is to conceal the fact that my wife was a murderess.
Geoffrey, how can you say that?
Markham, if you were...
Just a moment, Mr. Romney. I'm not through with him yet.
This talk is all very dramatic, Mr. Holmes, but I wonder how you're going to be able to prove
Dr.
anything.
Watson, Mr. Romney, and I will testify to the attempt that you've just made on Mrs. Markham's life.
Yes, and what about the attempt on your life, Holmes? Obviously, it was Markham who fired at you in the woods.
But my wife has already admitted firing the shot.
True, sir. But 2 shots were fired. The one that your wife fired, we found in the tree. The one that you fired was extracted from my shoulder in the hospital.
Then the two shots were fired simultaneously.
You remember, Watson, that I commented at the time on a curious echo. Mrs. Markham told us that her arm was jolted as she pulled the trigger. That was when the other rifle was fired. Mr. Markham didn't want me on the scene when he staged his latest accident, and so he tried to kill me.
What kind of a devil have I been living with all these years?
I think I'm going to kill you,
Don't come near me. Keep him away from me.
Leave him to the law courts, Mr. Romney. British justice may be slow, as indeed it was in the Dangerfield case, but in the long run, it is sure. You'll find that out, Mr. Markham, on the gallows.
Well, tell me, Doctor, did Mr. Markham finally end on the gallows?
Yes, he did. And it might interest you to know that Mrs. Markham and Dennis Romney were married. A nice chap and a fine actor, that boy.
Maybe that's what I should have been. An actor. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is noble in the mind to suffer. Well, what's the matter, Doctor? Don't you like it?
The words are beautiful, but your delivery of them...
Not good, huh?
No, not good, Mr. Bartell.
Okay. I'd rather talk about Petri wine anyway. Now, there's something to really talk about. Petri wine. A wine with generations of winemaking behind it. That's a fact, you know. The Petri family started making Petri wine generations ago. Way back in the 1800s. So they've had the time to develop the art of winemaking, and they've been able to hand down that art from father to son, from father to son. Yes, the Petri family really knows how to turn luscious, sun-ripened California grapes into clear, fragrant, delicious wine. And those letters, P-E-T-R-I, on the bottle, are the personal assurance of the Petri family that every drop of Petri wine is good wine. It's got to be. Because don't forget, Petri took time to bring you good wine. Well, Dr. Watson, what new Sherlock Holmes story are you going to tell us next week?
Well, now, let me see. Next week, Mr. Bartell, I'm going to tell you an exciting adventure Holmes and I had in North Africa. It begins at the headquarters of the Foreign Legion and ends with a strange death in the Cafe of 1,000 Sighs. I call the story Murder in the Casbah.
Tonight's Sherlock Holmes adventure is written by Dennis Green and Anthony Boucher and was suggested by an incident in the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle story, The Adventure of Black Peter. Music is by Dean Fosler. Mr. Rathbone appears through the courtesy of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer and Mr. Bruce through the courtesy of Universal Pictures, where they are now starring in the Sherlock Holmes series. The Petri Wine Company of San Francisco, California, invites you to tune in again next week, same time, same station. This is Harry Bartell saying goodnight for the Petri family. This program originated in the Paramount Theater in Hollywood for an audience of Victory Bond buyers. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.